Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome West Memphis, Arkansas Mayor Marco McClendon and Dr. Deborah West, Chancellor, Arkansas State University, Mid-South.
Good morning. Good morning. I am so excited to be here in this building today. I walked in and seen so many great looking individuals who's going to bring a lot of knowledge to our community today. I'm honored to be here celebrating with you all the Hope Economic Mobility Forum. I had an opportunity to sit down to the table with Mr. Bill Bynum, as well as seeing many great friends from Frederick Freeman to Mr. Frank Bateman, and all of you all that's here. We are honored to have you all in our city. Now, I'm a little excited because I'm the type of person, when you see so many people from around this area in your city, you want to tell about the great things that your city is being able to do right now. And I'm one of the ones that I'm a cheerleader for West Memphis. I'm so honored to talk about all the great things. We're the only city in America that have I-40 and I-55 that runs through the heart. So that lets you know it's over 85,000 vehicles that's going through our city every day. So what that say to me is a lot of economic development opportunity right here in the city of West Memphis. We're all working on some major things, building new housing in our community. We know home ownership is very important for our community. We know that the basic economic developments that we are working on, and the big announcement that I can't say because many of you all understand that we're under an NDA on some things, but I can't let it out. I really want to let it out, but I can't. So I'm just excited that right now we have been able to accomplish a brand new hospital. Right now we have a very good educational system, whether it's in our senior high schools, our junior high school, or right here at ASU Mid-South. Then being able to work on quality of life is very important, and we are leading the way on serving and quality of life here in our city. And public safety is very important for the city of West Memphis. So we're so honored to have you all here, being able to truly seize the moment that we're about to seize in this room right now, because there's so much education and information that you all will be able to take home with you all, be able to help invest back in us, because when you come to West Memphis, you are truly in a city that's on a winning streak. And like I said, our winning streak is not only because we have Southland Casino here, but our winning streak because of everything that everything that you all bring to our community to make our city better. And I cannot wait to just learn and hear more of the information that you all have to give, and that I'm going to suck up as a sponge, because I think it's important that we continue to move our city forward. And West Memphis is truly going to benefit. I'm so happy about the partnership and having Hope Credit Union right here in our community. Let's get over now. I mean, Hope has been able to do so many amazing things within our community. Actually, my mom and dad has an account there, and soon I was told that now I got to have an account there, and we're going to make that happen, because being able to give back to this community is great. It's a great thing. And all the knowledge and information that you all will learn or that you all will pour into this community is going to be great. So I'm Mayor Marco McClendon here on behalf of the city of West Memphis. I want to say welcome. And like we used to say in church a long time ago, you're welcome once, you're welcome twice, you're always welcome in West Memphis house. So I want to say thank you all, and may God bless you, and may you all get all the information that you need to be successful and help our city. May God bless you, and thank you.
I always hate following Mayor McClendon because I don't quite bring the same level of energy that he does, but we do appreciate him and the work that he's doing for the city of West Memphis. Welcome, everyone. My name is Deborah West, and I'm the chancellor here at Arkansas State University Mid-South. It is our privilege to welcome you all here today. It's particularly my privilege to reconnect with some old friends, Mr. Bynum, Mr. Sivak, Martha Claire Bullard up here at the front table. I spent about 10 years of my professional life working in the state of Mississippi, and these folks were great partners to the work that I was doing down there with the Mississippi Community College system. I've been back in West Memphis. This area is my home. I'm a product of the Delta. Been back in this system here for the last 10 years doing the good work for the people of Crittenden County and the surrounding Memphis metropolitan area. ASU Mid-South is a comprehensive community college. We have Arkansas State University in our name, but we still have our community college focus. And so we are partners in economic development, community development, and for those of you who are in that work, which most of you, if not all of you in this room are, if you are not partnering with your local community college, you're missing out on a huge component of what you need to be doing. They do more than just train. So they're not just there to provide baccalaureate or associate degrees leading to a baccalaureate degree. They're there to help you with workforce training. They're there to help you bring resources to bear on whatever you're trying to make happen in your community. So please don't overlook them. I think oftentimes people think they're just here to educate students, but it's much more than that. That's the comprehensive part. We've been a school, we're relatively young. We've been a school since 1992. We started life as a vocational school, and we still have a very heavy vocational focus here on our campus because we know that is the path for most of the students that we serve for economic mobility and economic success on the individual side. On the economic development side, we have an obligation to train these students so that they can go to work for the industries that are located here in this community, and also to provide the workforce that we need to attract new industries. So that's who we are. We're so delighted to host you today. We know the work that you're doing in your own communities is quite powerful and so needed. If it's anything like any place else in the Delta, we all share the same types of challenges, and I know that's why you're here today, and what you'll glean from this is that we're all in the same boat. We just got to row harder, right? So thank you all again for being here, and if there's anything ASU Mid-South can ever do for you, please do not hesitate to let us know. Thank you.
Please welcome Hope CEO Bill Bynum.
Deborah, I certainly won't bring the energy of Mayor McClendon either, and I brought my notes. I'm not quite as trusting myself this morning to get all the information out that I want to convey to you all without my notes, so please bear with me. But I do want to start by welcoming all of you to our forum today here in West Memphis, and for those who are online, we have almost as many people online viewing this through YouTube. So there's a lot of interest in the information that's going to be shared with you here today, and we could not be a better place to do the third of our economic mobility forums here in West Memphis today on your campus. So thank you so much. Mayor, your generous welcoming was very appreciated. As you said, we are a proud resident of West Memphis, and I'm glad that you took me up on my offer to follow your mom and your relatives to become a member owner of Hope Credit Union. So we look forward to welcome you into the fold. Dr. West, this is a place that I've been to a few times. Advancing economic mobility, it was a few years ago, I was on a group that the Gates Foundation pulled together to focus on what does it take to increase mobility from poverty, to make sure that children have the ability to earn more than their parents when they're adults. You know, it used to be a 90% of all children was given that they would earn more than their adults when they became grown. Now it's a coin flip, it's 50-50. And in places like the Delta, the odds are even worse. And so advancing people's ability to support their families, support their communities is critical, and nowhere more than here in the Mid-South Delta. And so thank you, and thank you for your friendship over the years, for your leadership in making sure that our future leaders and our future workforce are equipped to do the work. So thank you. Hope opened our doors back in 1994, and I look around the room and there are so many people who have been a part of our journey over the years. I had to hug my brother Frederick Freeman when he came in the room. We've been in the wilderness fields for a long time. He's a leader in the Arkansas Delta. Thomas Grigg from the East Arkansas Enterprise community worked with her and Dr. Cole for several years when we were just figuring out which way is up, and you all have, many of you, been critical to Hope's journey since we opened our doors as a small loan fund working in Arkansas, Louisiana, Mississippi, along 55 counties and parishes along the river, with a goal of equipping businesses to provide jobs that pay good wages and offer good benefits. We knew that it would take a lot more than $1.5 million that we got to get out of the gate to reverse the effects of generations of underinvestment in this region. We also knew it would not only take more investment, but it would require finding common ground with the people, with organizations, forging partnerships, and otherwise working together to make sure that our shared interests of a stronger, more prosperous Delta were realized, empowering everyone to reach their potential regardless of where they were born, who their parents were, what side of the railroad tracks they happened to be on. We built on this approach over the years, working again with many of you in this room over the past 3 decades. And as a result, we have been able to drive more than nearly $4 billion to benefit 3 million plus people and help them climb the economic ladder, strengthen their communities, put their families on the right track. And so thank you all for helping us navigate 3 decades here in the Delta. And quite honestly, I think we're just getting started. Really excited about where we are and where we're going. There's so much more work to do. Unfortunately, we've got allies like you here that share our belief that the economy should work for everyone. Dr. West, we have brought folks to the Delta. We always feel that the Delta can tell its story much better than we can. And I remember we hosted a group from the Gates Foundation that was, as I said here a few years ago, people who were trying to figure out how to help people climb the economic ladder. In 1999, we hosted a former governor of Arkansas who had recently become president at one of our plants in Clarksdale, Mississippi, when he launched a program called the New Markets Tax Credit. Today it has generated billions and billions of dollars in private capital to support economic opportunity in places like the ones we live. In 2019, we brought the first time that a sitting chairman of the Federal Reserve Board came to the Delta. He was, Jay Powell came to Itabena and sat down with students at Mississippi Valley State University before he addressed an economic mobility forum like this, and left there saying that he cannot use the tools that he has to get the economy in the position to grow if so many people are outside the financial system. And so we took that charge and have been trying to get more people into non-predatory accounts, out of payday lenders and check cashers, out of subprime lenders, into places where they can have the same tools that other people take for granted. And so we really appreciate you all helping us to tell the story of the Delta. In June 2016, we were scheduled to bring then Vice President Joe Biden into the Delta and repeat a tour similar to that. Some of you may remember when Bobby Kennedy came to the Delta and told the country there should not be such abject poverty anywhere in the world's most prosperous nation. He wasn't able to make it. It was Secret Service had come. We were ready to go, but there was a tragic incident at a Pulse nightclub in Orlando. People were murdered, and he was with President Obama at that event when he was going to be here. But fast forward a few years later, I had the privilege of serving on President Biden and Vice President Harris's transition team. And in April 22, we welcomed Vice President Harris to the Mississippi Delta, where she met with small businesses, and you could just feel the appreciation and energy as people lined the streets when someone in that significant a position of influence came and told them that they mattered. The Delta matters. We know that the people in this region can do anything that anyone else can do if they have the opportunity, if they have the tools. We're here today to make sure that they have the tools, and so we appreciate you all being a part of this. We're here today because the legislation passed by Congress and signed into law by President Biden is providing historic levels of resources for funding for infrastructure, jobs, a cleaner environment, and other transformational investments. But history has shown us that it's not enough that these programs exist. Unless we take intentional steps to make sure that places like the Delta are equipped to access and manage these resources, they will go to better prepared people and places. And we'll be on the short end of the stick, and the gaps will get wider. So we're here today to make sure that that does not happen. We're joined by experts, Delta leaders who will share their perspectives on opportunities and needs in their communities, and from representatives of the Biden administration who will talk to us about these historic resources and what they can mean for people in the Delta and what it will take for us to seize the moment, to make sure that the gaps don't get wider, to make sure that the people of Delta have the opportunity to realize their potential. So let's get to work. Let's get to work, folks. There's a slight change to the agenda. Due to unexpected events, we will not have a keynote speaker. So instead of appetizer, we'll go straight to the main course. We'll have more time for the experts to share their perspectives. And instead of one, we'll have two panels of federal experts to share information about what their resources are and how they equipped us to strengthen our communities. Before I turn the mic over to my colleagues, I do want to again express my deep appreciation to our panelists, to our hosts here in West Memphis and at the university, and to the White House and Treasury officials who have been working with us to organize these forums. We had our first one in Cleveland, Mississippi, at Delta State University. Our second one was in Selma, in the Alabama Black Belt, and we wrap up here today in West Memphis. And the White House has been incredibly committed to helping to make sure that you all have the information that you need. I also want to ask my colleagues at HOPE to stand. Everybody who's a HOPE associate, please stand. Thank you. Thank you. I know I'm biased, but pound for pound, these are the baddest economic development professionals in the country. I also want to thank our partners at Linder Global who have made these, a logistics consulting firm who have made these experiences flow so smoothly, and Haley Keith and her colleagues are here, so thank you, Linder, and thank all of you. Thanks to everyone. Thank you all for joining us and what you all do to improve lives in the Deep South. Let's get to work.
All right, good morning. I'll try this again. Good morning. Good morning. That's right. Let's act like we ate cake for breakfast. Let's do that. How about that? I couldn't be the only one. All right, let's get started. So my name is Keon Burt. I'm the director of the Hope Policy Institute, and today I'm going to give you an economic overview of the Deep South, specifically the North Delta region, which includes the Mississippi and Arkansas Delta counties. And so I want to get us started with getting a deeper understanding of why do federal investments matter to this particular region. So first, let's take a look at economic mobility. See if I can get this clicker to work. There we go. So what exactly is economic mobility? Well, economic mobility refers to the ability of individuals, families, and households to improve their economic status over a period of time. We're talking about their ability to move upward or downward the income and wealth ladder relative to their initial position. Now, this data point allows us to see insights into opportunities for socioeconomic advancement within a particular society, which in this case is going to be the North Delta region. So you're looking at a map that's provided by Opportunity Insights that shows economic mobility of children born in low-income households. And what you see is that red shows communities that make lower or equal incomes as their parents, and blue shows the income outcomes of children also born to low-income parents, but they make now higher incomes. So if you can look at the southeastern region, you're going to see a whole lot of red. So what does that mean? That means that children born to low-income households in these communities are making at most the same amount of income as their parents, or at worst lower incomes than as their parents made. But what you don't see in other areas of the country, like the Midwest, you see blue. You see that they have different opportunities to climb and rise the economic ladder for wealth attainment. So what does that mean? That means that in these regions that we live in, we're not seeing economic mobility. We're not seeing upward advancement along the economic ladder, which again underscores the reason why we're here today. So let's keep moving along here. Here we go. Let's take a look at the economic mobility outcomes in the region that we're in today. This is the North Delta region, Arkansas, Mississippi Delta counties. And as you can see along the Mississippi River and in the portion of the Alabama Black Belt, you're going to see deep red. Again, children here of low-income parents are not seeing economic upward mobility, okay? And if we had time to include a slide of the 1860 slave holdings, you would have seen that these are the same communities hundreds of years ago that had deep concentrations of enslaved Africans and indigenous people, okay? And if we continue to drill down, I don't know, say Crittenden County, we see that again, although this is an urban county, in the rural places of Crittenden County, just right outside of West Memphis, you're going to see again, low economic mobility for children who are born in low-income households. Now, what you'll also see across the river is the city of Memphis, and you're going to see a lot of red there too. What's fascinating is that this is the intersection of race, place, and policy, even in a city like Memphis, where those majority red census tracts are going to be predominantly black with low median household incomes. And on the east side of Memphis, you're going to see a nice slither of blue, Collierville, and that's where the concentration of race, white, and wealth are in the city of Memphis. And what's also interesting, not to get ahead of myself, is that research shows that Memphis it has the highest rate of energy cost burden of any city in the entire nation. So economic mobility seems to correlate with other geographic determinants of climate change and energy cost burdens. Let's keep going. If I'm going too fast, yeah, Shell, slow down, okay? Shout, slow down, sorry. Let's keep going. There we go. So, as I just mentioned, economic mobility, or the lack thereof, is correlating with other geographic indicators of socioeconomic outcomes. And what you see here is a map of persistent poverty. Persistent poverty is any county that has a poverty rate of at least 20% for the past 3 decades. And fascinatingly enough, in our region, these same counties have been in poverty for at least 5 decades. In fact, our 5-state footprint, Alabama, Arkansas, Louisiana, Mississippi, and Tennessee, have a third of the nation's persistent poverty counties concentrated in our footprint. But what you will see on either side of this map of persistent poverty are 3 inset maps that show mobility barriers. So in the green is going to be the persistent poverty county, and the slightly shaded area is going to be the mobility driver or the barrier. And what you will see is that these persistent poverty counties have a disproportionate concentration of high-cost mortgages. They have a disproportionate concentration of poor health outcomes, high rates of unemployment, and equally importantly, the highest rates of unbanked and underbanked households in the country. But economic mobility not only tracks with those mobility barriers, if you will, these barriers to wealth building and health outcomes, it also tracks with weaker electrical infrastructures and climate change damages. Here are 2 maps that show the energy cost burden by race or BIPOC communities. It's on the left, and on the right, you're going to see the percentage of days that are suspected to see high rates of increase of heat along the same region. And what we find is that rural communities and communities of color face higher risk of energy burdens in the Deep South. So if you look at the North Delta region along the Mississippi River, you're going to see a lot of dark color, right? If you see, similar in the map on the right, you're going to see a lot of shaded dark area because extreme heat projections disproportionately are concentrated in the Mississippi, Arkansas Delta, and the Alabama Black Belt. Okay. We also see, according to the CEQ Climate and Economic Justice Screening Tool, which measures indicators of burdens along 8 categories. We're looking at climate change, energy, health, housing, legacy, pollution, transportation, water, sewage, and wastewater, is that there are many counties and census tracts in the North Delta that are also disproportionately considered disadvantaged. Take, for example, Tunica County. It's ranked 89th in energy costs, 83rd and 79th in health outcomes, looking at diabetes and I think it's asthma, right? So just going to take a quick breather to say that in our region, you're seeing an intersection or a concentration of compounding barriers to economic mobility, where in one sense it's not just access to wealth generation, wealth generative products and services, it's also the ways in which the lack of access is manifested in other areas of community life and well-being. But I will not have you all in despair today, okay? There are solutions, which we'll talk about in just a second, but before we get to the solutions, let me lay it on a little thicker. These geographic challenges are unfortunately exacerbated by challenges to capital access and wealth drivers. So let's consider one significant driver of wealth, small business access to capital. Now we know that the racial wealth gap, which currently sits at 61, where whites have at the median, or in some cases the average, 6 times more wealth than black households, that number shrinks to 3 to 1 when we look at small business ownership or small business owners. But unfortunately, we see, according to the graphic on the left, that less than a third of black-owned businesses are fully approved for business loans. Relatedly, we see on the graphic on the right, the black-owned businesses are more likely to be denied for small business applications, 47%. Now, as we have seen in the previous slides I've shown, the economic mobility is lower in the regions in which black businesses are located. Again, those at the North Delta area, Mississippi Delta, Alabama Black Belt. Now, what's also interesting is that we know that capital access is a significant driver of small business growth, which is particularly true for non-employer firms, which in our region, 74% of all businesses are non-employer firms. So that number increases to 96% when we look at businesses of color. So small business access capital is critical to building wealth, but it's also critical to provide the economic stability for a particular community. Now we also see that similar challenges exist for access to home ownership. Home ownership is linked through a number of studies over several decades to positive household and community outcomes such as greater wealth attainment by adding or gaining equity in your home, civic engagement, and health outcomes. However, the racial home ownership gap is larger today than when it was explicit racial discrimination was legal in 1960. And what you'll also see by looking at this graphic in our region that the racial home ownership gap is particularly acute in the Deep South, even more so than the national. It seems to be on par, but it's slightly higher. Now to the positivity. I promise you I won't leave you in despair. Let's go back a slide. Can I go back? There we go. Stay there. So, despite the depth of challenges in the region, solutions exist, change is possible. Here we have a graphic of liquid asset poverty in our 5-state footprint. What is liquid asset poverty? That's the measure of a household's ability to pay their expenses if they were to lose employment or source of income. And what you will see that in 2019, the liquid asset poverty rate in the region, particularly, we'll say Arkansas, was 45%. This is 2019. What do you notice in 2021? This is the bar that's the light blue. You see that in Arkansas it was 37%. So 45% to 37%. What happened between 2019 and 2021? I don't know, a pandemic? Well, even more important than the pandemic was the federal response to the unprecedented outbreak. We saw federal investments at the household level along the lines of stimulus checks, child tax credits, unemployment benefits, and SNAP benefits. And you see quite clearly a reduction in liquid asset poverty. You see quite clearly households beginning to find economic mobility and financial stability as a result of federal intervention. Now, I want you to keep something in mind. I want you to keep in mind that these federal investments, when deployed most directly to communities, will disproportionately, in a positive way, benefit households of color because they are shown here. There we go. The communities that are most in need, where you will see households of color, this is Black and Latino households, have higher rates of liquid asset poverty than their white counterparts. Okay. Now, let's come on home. I promise I won't preach to you long today. Now, this is a map of the Real Capacity Index, which was created by Headwaters Economics. It looks at the metrics by which a rural county has the capacity for government staff, institutional capacity, economic opportunity, and educational resources. But what you'll see is that the lighter the area is shaded, the less capacity there is. So the brighter the color, the less capacity. And the darker areas have greater ability to absorb federal resources. And what you will see is what I've shown in previous slides, that in that Delta region, the Mississippi, Alabama, Arkansas, Black Belts, you're going to see higher colored, lighter colored counties and areas. And if we were to take a drill down more specifically to the North Delta region, I don't know why my clicker's giving me a hard time. There we go. You see a lot of gold, don't you? But that gold, or this bright yellow, should represent not an issue of despair or just challenges, but rather an opportunity for opportunity. This gives us the chance to make a difference, to give us the ability to provide access through federal investments to the communities that need it the most, which is why we brought you here today. So I will conclude there. Let's have a great 2 sets of panels, and let's make some access. Thank y'all. Sorry, and these slides will be available, we will post them. They will also be available on YouTube, which is being live streamed now. So we'll be sure to share them out.
Please welcome to the stage the Community Perspectives panel.
Hello, hello. All right, Mr. Bateman. Hi. There he comes. He's making the grand entrance. Good morning, good morning. We are very excited to have you here. And I'll start. I can in just a second. Yeah, I'll sit there. Okay, well, good morning. My name is Charity Hallman. I serve as the Senior Vice President for Community and Economic Development here at Hope, and am very proud to have this opportunity. I'm a native Arkansan. I grew up in the Delta, and so this just feels sort of full circle for me. So very excited to be here. And as my colleague Kiad pointed out, the context and the perspectives of the communities we serve really matter. And that's why we're starting off or kicking off our panels today from a community perspective. I'm joined here by two very esteemed colleagues. They have been working in these communities for many years and have a deep connection, and I'm excited for what you're going to learn and what they can share with us, because as you know, it matters. Every place is important, and every place has its own set of challenges and wins. And so I'm joined today by Mr. Frank Bateman. He's the Executive Director of the Arkansas Mayors Association, Arkansas Black Mayors Association, and Ms. Martha Claire Bullen, the Director of Community Sustainability at Communities Unlimited. And so, just to help set the stage for those online, over the next 40 minutes, you're going to hear what's working, what's needed, and how we can work collaboratively to ensure that these important resources reach the communities that we all love and call home. So without further ado, we'll get started. Hello. Oh, there we go. Okay. Economic development is my role, not usually being on stage. Testing. Okay, great. So without further ado, let's begin. I'd love to start with both of you introducing yourselves, your organizations, and your mission, some of your strategic priorities that you have. So I'll start with you, Mr. Bateman.
I'm Frank Bateman. I'm the Executive Director of the Arkansas Black Mayors Association. I've worked in Senator Pryor's office in 2007, started working with the Black Mayors Association at that time, so I've been at it for about 17 years. Our top priority right now is we have a $100 million agreement that we signed with USDA NRCS in April of 2022 for flooding and drainages in the Delta areas. Went to Rockefeller Foundation was a foundation that helped us apply for this agreement, and we've been, like I say, that's a top priority. We've been doing it since April of 2022. One of my mayors is here, Mariana Orr Stevens. Mayor Stevens is here, and she's participating in the program and the project. 14 projects. We're doing 14 projects all at the same time. Planning, trying to get it done by December of this year so we can go into the next phase of design and construction. That's our main priority at this time.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Martha Claire Bullen. I am the Director of Community Sustainability at Communities Unlimited. I live in the Mississippi Delta in Humphreys County, one of those counties that you saw in all of the wrong colors when you looked at those maps, but in agreement, I'm here hopefully to share some really exciting things that we can look forward to when we look at helping communities move forward. Our organization is part of a larger national network called RCAP. It is the Rural Communities Assistance Partnerships. Communities Unlimited serves across 7 states, so we have a very large footprint. It's always fun for me to get to be in Arkansas, Louisiana, or Mississippi because that's really where I got my start in this work. I began at a foundation out of Jackson, Mississippi, the Foundation for the Mid-South, and then made my way over to Communities Unlimited. Our organization has over 100 staff. They are embedded in the 7 states that we work in. We consider ourselves to be a rural community development hub. We really believe that it shouldn't matter where you live, the size of the community, whether it's rural or urban, but that everyone should have opportunities to live, work, worship, play, do all those things wherever they want to. And that means if I want to live in a small community of about 300, which is where I live, that's okay. And if we want to live in a metropolis, that's okay. But we need to figure out how do we get the resources out into the farthest reaches of community where there aren't as many people and there's not as much capacity. We have amazing teams that do work in water, wastewater, and some of them are here with us today. It's an honor to get to be in the room with some of my coworkers because we're spread out across 7 states, so we don't always get to be together, but they do amazing things in communities to look at water, wastewater, and how do we get federal dollars into rural communities. We have an amazing team that works with entrepreneurs and small business, and some of them are here today, and they do an amazing job of helping small businesses figure out what do they need to thrive in the spaces where they are, or grow, or create succession plans. We do work around GIS mapping, which is actually something that I didn't know a lot about when I got to CU, but I have learned is critical for communities to know where their infrastructure is. How do they make plans for the future when they don't know? My team specifically is the community development arm, and what we do is we go in and we just start building relationships in community because we believe that we need to create connections with the people before we try to bring any kind of content to them and tell them we think it's a good opportunity. And so that means we need funders and opportunities that give us a very long runway. We can't go in and in 30 days build those relationships. And Brad, who is on our environmental team, can attest, we've got stories that go back 20 years of building relationships in communities, and we're just now seeing them reach the pinnacle of what they wanted to do. So that's kind of who we are, and just an honor. You know, we appreciate Hope allowing us to step into this space and talk a little today about our work.
Thank you. So as I said, you're in good hands here today. So I'd love for you to start and talk about the approach you take, the assets that you see in the communities that you're serving. I can't imagine launching 14 projects throughout the state is an easy task. So can you talk to some of the assets you see in those communities and what's making that work successful?
I want to back up a minute. Frederick Freeman is here. Frederick was with us on the writing the agreement, and he really kind of pushed it through. So I do want to acknowledge him. He was on loan with Rentham Rockefeller Foundation. Our assets in our communities, I always go to the mayors. The mayors are very passionate about their towns. They see things that I sit there and talk to them that I just wouldn't see living in North Little Rock as opposed to one of the towns. They have a lot of hope, a lot of faith, but very passionate. And then the people of the community, that's where they choose to live. You know, some of them can move from Marietta to Memphis, or they can move from Cotton Plant or Marion or wherever, but they choose to live in those towns. Earl, you know, they choose to live in those towns. And so I would say the assets is first my mayors, and then the people that I talk to in the communities.
I couldn't agree with you more. Our people are wonderful.
Same question. Absolutely agree with Mr. Bateman that it starts with the people. For every space we go into is different. If you've worked in this work for very long, you've probably heard someone say if you've been to one rural community, you've been to one rural community, because they're different. They have some of the same issues, but they look a little different everywhere you go, but the people are wonderful in every one of them. They're what's holding those communities together a lot of times when they're trying to figure it out along the way. I think another really incredible asset for communities that you just have to figure out the right way to get them to look at is what they have in the community that they've forgotten about. One of the greatest pleasures of our team is what we get to do called reconnaissance work, where before we start working in a community, we go and we just do some driving around the community, taking pictures, having lunch in the local restaurant, if there is one, going to the gas station, and asking questions like, if I was new here, what's the one thing that I shouldn't miss out on? Or if I live somewhere outside of here and I'm coming through town, where should I stop? Most of the time, the people will start in with what's strong about their community, not what's wrong. They want to tell you the good things that they love and why they choose to live there. But sometimes, occasionally, you will get someone who says the road out of town, and you just got to dig in a little deeper and keep asking questions till you find someone who will start to tell you what are the really cool things in town. Sometimes we get in a community and we start to talk to them about their assets, and they're like, oh man, I forgot about that. We have a community that has statues around town that represent something local in their history. They're beautifully painted. They sit outside small businesses in the community. We had someone come into town and do one of those recon visits, and they took all of these pictures of the statues. And then when we met with the community leadership team that we had gotten together of community champions, not just our mayors and our city managers, but the person who always shows up to the city council meeting just because they want to know what's happening in their town, the guy you see picking up the trash in the park because he loves this community. When we got them to the table and we showed them what an outside person saw when they visited, they were amazed. They're like, man, I wish I still saw the beauty in those things in the community. Or I wish I saw this old building that could be something, could be an incubator space for small businesses. And so I think there are a lot of assets that we just have to remind the communities that they're there, because when you drive by them, I'm guilty of it. I live in a small community. I drive by the same thing every day, and I bet if you came to Silver City, Mississippi, you might see something that I've missed.
So I think you're talking about potential, right? So there is so much potential. I think it is what has drawn so many of us back here. And so I'd love for you to talk about the potential that you see with collaborating with municipalities and to increase economic mobility and maximize these federal resources. We are at this wonderful moment in time where there's so much opportunity, and I feel like you're taking advantage of it now, but if you could just kind of dig in a little deeper on like what it took to get to the place that you could launch this kind of program and the work that, the change you're going to see in these 14 communities.
I got to back up again. I also worked for Communities Unlimited from 2018 to 2022. So I had some background in continuing to work in those communities. And when you say that, I actually worked as an environmental specialist. So when I was working for the senator, that was something I would just hand off and just really didn't pay a lot of attention to. But when I came on with Communities Unlimited, it was something different. Of learning about the sewer and water and the infrastructure. And that's one of the main issues that is still happening now with the ARPA funds. A lot of the communities were funded and are still being funded. I work with Communities Unlimited right here at Turl, and they were having problems with lift stations. And so when I went out, seen it, we were able to watch them put that together. They had their water tower was on the ground. And so just recently, last 2 or 3 weeks, I was able to, the mayor sent me a picture of the new water tower up where it's supposed to be. So with this ARPA funds that we've received in the last 2 or 3 years, a lot of our communities are receiving those kind of benefits. Just you think, the infrastructure part, I really didn't think too much about that. It's happening, water and sewer, it's gonna happen, but it doesn't happen like that. And I learned that at Communities Unlimited, and then going into these communities, and we still wrestle with it. The water bills, go up and down, and people complain about that. But you have to have that, economic development. Nobody's coming to your town if you don't have water and sewer flowing the right way. So that's what I would say.
I'm going to ask you a little bit. Could you talk about who were your partners when the communities were thinking about the projects, and maybe how that First, was it strategic planning? Was it need? Were you able to break down barriers? Just who were your champions in your communities?
For this, for the flooding and drainage, we knew that it was occurring, but it wasn't on our top list. The top list of a survey done in 2018 for the black mayors was housing. You know, everybody wants housing up and down the Delta and everywhere. But when we sat down, and one of the areas was flooding, and then we heard that there was going to be some BIL money coming down the pipe. We had a guy on our team that knew where the resources were. So we partnered with him, and we wrestled and struggled with the getting the grant. We put it out there to all the mayors, and we had like 19 mayors respond. 5 of them received what we call preliminary investigation. 14 of them received the planning. So the barriers was just believing that, you know, we could get this done, get the grant in time, and then once we got the grant in time, you have to say, well, is it flooding that much? You know, and probably one of your questions later on I would probably answer, but I would like to answer it now, is April of 22, the Chief Cosby came down and awarded us the money. Right before he came down, it flooded in Mariana. And when it floods, people say, well, it floods in 2 or 3 days, it's going to go away. But, you know, when you talk to the community, it's not like that. I mean, it's with them a lifetime. You know, flood insurance goes up and down. May 22nd of this year, 2024, one of the worst floods while we're in the planning stage of this, another flood right there in Mariana. So that's something that we definitely got to fix, and we know we have to fix it.
So what I feel like you're getting to is there are compounding issues, but the federal resources have created a real path for improvement that will improve just quality of life, but also create an opportunity for businesses to be stood up and have continuity and confidence in their communities. We work with communities on a pretty regular basis, and some of the things that we hear or they share is that incomplete audits or reimbursement requirements or just limited capacity of their staff to write grants and manage compliance are some of the barriers. Would you agree that that's true? What other kind of challenges do you see that get in the way maybe of these resources being maximized?
About a year and a half ago, we started a new project in East Texas, which is one of the states that we serve. And I've been doing this for a long time, but I still learn lessons all the time, and I think that's part of growing and getting better. And when we went into that space and we created this program called Connect Rural that is in East Texas, one of the things that we hypothesized was if we had money for grant writing for these communities, they would go write grants and they would get them and they would solve some problems. But what we found out very quickly was that we had to back that up because we weren't ready for the grant part yet in a lot of the communities that we were working in. And it's the same across all 7 states. It's the same in the Delta region. It's the same in the Black Belt region. Communities have to be opportunity ready. There are things that come up in every single day that I get a phone call from a community where there is this serendipitous opportunity that is in front of them and they have to say no because they're not ready. And it is heartbreaking. And so a huge piece of our work is to go into communities and say, we're not here, we're not punitive, we are here as your friend, we want to build relationship, and we want to help. So if that means pulling out a shoebox of receipts and figuring out where to start because you haven't been audited in the last 5 years, and there are federal grants that's a requirement, 3 years of audits. You guys know that, a lot of you know, and that feels overwhelming, it feels insurmountable. And if we can, as an organization, go in and help a community start that process, sometimes what happens is it's a process. We have to get the funding. We have to create all the opportunities to get the audit. But in the meantime, we have opportunities for momentum building small projects that absolutely give communities hope. They feel like they can seize the next opportunity, that big one, they can go after it, because while we're working on the 5-year project to get the audits, to get the grant, to come in and start a big piece of work, whether it's water, wastewater infrastructure, whether it's broadband infrastructure, roads, whatever that long game project is, maybe we also find a philanthropic partner that wants to come into public-private partnership with us, and they say, while we're doing that, while they're working on that, let's have some community meetings and go after some what we call quick wins in our organization. Maybe that's signs on the highway that they've never had before that just point to the community and say, this is where Silver City is, this is where Marion, this is where Mariana is, whatever that might look like. Sometimes it's a community that's been wanting to have some lights on Main Street and just feel like it's a more livable community. And we can find a small grant. Hello? Okay, maybe. It will give them a chance to build that excitement in the community, because whether big organizations, agencies, philanthropic partners believe it or not, that is the piece of the puzzle that is a lot of times missing. Because a community that doesn't have any hope and doesn't see anything to grab a hold of, it's hard to keep them hanging on for a long-term project. And so for us, we feel like if we can go in and build those public-private partnerships, have the agencies, we have incredible partnerships with USDA, DOT, DOL, where we're working towards opportunities that are big and are huge infrastructure opportunities, but we got to do something along the way to keep the communities feeling like there's hope, giving them something to seize hold of and hang on to. Y'all, it's incredible to me, the fact that sometimes it is something as small as parking lot striping. I'm back. Sorry about that if I scared you, woke you up. We had a situation where small, 2 streets, Main Street, very small, 1 restaurant, City Hall, and that mayor said, you know what, Martha Claire, what I really wish we could do is just stripe the parking lot on Main Street. Stripe the parking spaces, because when people come downtown, they don't even know which way to park. And so they just park wherever they want to. You can't get many people down through town because there are no lines. And it would be amazing if we could just get the parking lot striped. Y'all, that's less than $5,000. We found that money, because $5,000 is a lot when you're out there as a mayor wearing 15 hats and you're in a ditch with a water problem and you're picking up the dog across town. And I'm telling you, it's a small project, Mayor, and you're like, they're all small, but when you put them all on my shoulders, they're real heavy. So we go and we find that opportunity for a small grant for that community, and we stripe the parking lot. You would have thought I gave that mayor $1 million. The way he stood in front of that building, the way they took pictures, it was, I was tearing up, because that was all it took. And the community was excited. I think we could have had a parade that day. It was big news, because that's what communities want. They just want to know that somebody cares enough to help them figure out what their solution is. And I think that's the most important key that I would probably get in real big trouble if I didn't mention is, we don't ever bring solutions to communities. We just sit down with them and let them know that their solutions are important and valid, and then help them figure out how to fund those solutions.
You couldn't have set me up better for this next question, which is talking twofold. Partnerships. Partnerships are very important. I would love for you to talk about what makes a good partnership, where have you found great partnerships, and then speak to, we have an audience here, of what kind of technical assistance do you see as missing out there? Do you find yourself saying, man, I wish we had someone who could assist with X? That would be really helpful, I think, for this audience to hear.
Partnerships, like I said, went to Rockefeller Foundation, came on board as a base when we received and got ready to receive the $100 million. But even before then, we just had a celebration of some teams that have helped, or partners that have helped the association way before my time. The Energy, AT&T. There's another one out there. But anyway, definitely those two were way before my time, and not just resources. You know, if somebody can pick up the phone when the power is out, you know, the first one they're going to come to is the mayor. They're going to bring the mayor's phones up so she or he would have access to AT&T and also to Energy. And they were able to sustain them and provide them some resources over the years. Like I say, way before my time. I did some research, and it went back to 1984. So that was a partnership that we've established. USDA is a great partner. NRCS, Rural Development has been a great partner for the mayors over the years. You know, we have good relationships with the congressional delegation, just other mayors that are in the communities around our towns. So we try to build as many partnerships as we can. If there's anything that that I would say that we really need in the communities, it's just, you know, go into the communities and spend time and try to understand or listen to what their needs are. You know, we're not going to be able to solve all the needs from the association standpoint. We know that even we got that money and we thought that $100 million is going to fix a lot. But once we're getting into it, you know, we're going to be able to fix some things, but some of the things goes way beyond that. But that's what I would say. Always some technical assistance. There's other technical assistance, the planning districts and stuff that goes into these towns and does some of the work also.
That's very helpful.
I think, likewise, I mean, partnership is the way we get it done. No matter how many staff we have, we are not ever going to be able to do it all. I mean, just if you look at the sheer size of some of the states that we work in, we couldn't possibly reach every single community that needs or wants assistance. And so we create partnerships. And those really do have to be local. We consider those like hyper-local when you go in and you build a leadership team where, again, it's your municipal government, but it's more than that. It's also trying to get some youth civic engagement. That's a really important piece. That's the future of these communities. And if we want them to stay or come back after they go maybe away to college, we have to get them involved before they leave and make them understand that their voices are the future of the town that they grew up in, and maybe, you know, decades, maybe generations have lived there, and we want them to stay or come home. And so we have to get them involved. And we've had some wonderful partnerships with both federal agencies and philanthropic partners that have said, do it. Get the youth engaged, make that happen. And so we've been working really hard to create a model that not only engages them at the leadership table, but also that engages them in the work through AmeriCorps type programming. And we think that if you create an opportunity in a large way across these communities where you're investing in the youth, then when the time comes, they'll know enough about opportunities that are out there that they want to see in their community that they'll want to bring it back. And so they need to be a part of the partnership. I think that when we talk partnership at Communities Unlimited, we couldn't do our work without USDA. We couldn't do our work without EPA, Department of Labor. Those agencies and the funding that comes to bear for our organization create an opportunity for us to offer technical assistance in communities that we wouldn't be able to do. But the other side of that is our philanthropic investments. We have partners across the country, and it's an honor to me when we get to see large philanthropic organizations start to recognize the level of investment disparity in regions like the Delta and say, what do we do? Because we don't know who's doing good work in that region. We're sitting wherever we are in our office, and we don't know who are the best partners. And so fortunately, you know, we're a part of several large national groups like Partners for Rural Transformation, and those groups, another one is called Resource Rural. Those groups are really working to bring together those philanthropic partners from across the country and say, these are people that know what's happening in these communities and can be a trusted advisor on how you invest your philanthropic dollars into these spaces. And fortunately, Arkansas is one of those spaces for us because it's in our network. We have money right now where we're able to offer some of that technical assistance around grant readiness, grant preparedness, whether that's helping a community work on audits or if it's the grant writing piece. If you've got that audit in your coffers and you're ready with that piece, but you really need someone to sit down and walk you through the narrative writing piece, or maybe just help you build out a template for future grant proposals to kind of understand that. We've been very fortunate to get some federal philanthropic dollars around that grant readiness piece. So I think that the partnership piece cannot be overstated. We cannot do it without everybody being at the table and seeing what's their piece that has to be there, because otherwise it's an incomplete puzzle.
I couldn't agree more. I was recently in an event where the catchphrase caught on of, if you could do it by yourself, it's probably not worth doing. And I think that's a lot of what we're talking about here, right, is working together collaboratively. And so to that point, I really want to push, because this is such an opportunity to voice, like, we've talked quite a bit about infrastructure, and that can't be understated, right? Those are really important projects. They're foundational for community success. But what are some of the other initiatives where you're seeing success, where you see additional need? Just kind of help expose what are these other issues your mayors are facing and what they would like to see done, and maybe have others lean into.
Well, I would say just investment in small businesses in some of the towns. Was able to visit Blytheville a couple of months ago, and we started out, we were going to do Blytheville, Osceola, and we had a meeting down here the next day, and we didn't even get out of Blytheville. We was there for 3 hours with the mayor, and she took us all around and showed us what was going good and then what she wanted to add. And but one of her things is trying to grow entrepreneurship in Blytheville. We know the steel mills is up there. But entrepreneurship, working with small businesses, putting money back into the communities that you work in. Housing up there is up and down the Delta is a key to all of that, and they want to keep the money in the communities instead of someone driving to Missouri or coming back down to Tennessee. She would like to keep it around there. Like I said, we didn't get to Osceola, but I'm pretty sure he has some of the same situations. Small business, investing in small businesses, putting money back into the communities.
Okay, Okay, I've received our 5-minute warning, so this is your 2 minutes for closing remarks.
I think I want to just echo what Frank said about entrepreneurship and small business. And again, we have some amazing folks, including our director of our entrepreneurship team that is here back in the back of the room, Cynthia Terry, and they do amazing work. And I think that opening up the opportunity for people to get in a room together like this, but also in communities or counties where people that they live 7 miles from each other, but they've not ever sat in a room and figured out the things about them that make them more alike than different, is critical. And just in the last week, we had an opportunity to be in a community where we had this amazing group of staff from our team that represented all of our different work: entrepreneurship, environmental, GIS, community development, housing, lending. All of them were in that space with those community members. And what happens when you do that, when you get everybody in the room together, is sometimes you get a solution in real time, or you get an opportunity in real time. And I know that happened with Dr. Love, who's in the back with Cynthia Terry, also on our entrepreneurship team, where there was a family that was closing a 100-year-old business and had this building, and there was a young couple that wanted to grow their business, and he meets them both or hears about them both, and the next thing you know, he's connecting them in the parking lot, and they're going to look at the building together, and he's trying to get them loan funding so they can buy it. Those things don't happen if we don't just get people in the room to talk, so that we can just meet each other and talk about life and the things that would make our communities better from our perspective and from your perspective. And so I think that is something that we got to do more of. We got to talk more to each other.
Oh, we do enjoy talking. We also enjoy action, for sure. So I want to leave you, Frank, you've got the last word.
Well, the last word, you know, in our communities, you know, I sat with Mr. Bynum when I came in, and I've seen him on webinars, hadn't talked to him in person, and we were talking about getting to construction with this grant, and he understood what I said when I'm saying we're in planning, we got to do design and get to construction. But you know, one of his challenges, which is one of the chief challenges, was make sure we get this money back in our communities. And you know, that's all our communities want. We want to be these communities want to be treated justly. You know, if they miss out on the grant, you know, give them a second chance, get it to them early. If they miss it, you know, show them what they did wrong for the next round. As far as construction events or anything like that, put the money back in the community. We've been learning that, and that was one of the challenges when the chief came here in 22. And the Black Mayors Association has lived up to that, and we will continue to live up to that. So that would be my last word. Thank you.
Well, yes, please. Let's give our esteemed panelists a strong round of applause. Thank you both for your time and your dedication to the Delta, and just your heart for sharing that on stage today. So we really appreciate that. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take a short break while we reset for the next panel.
All right. Good morning, everyone. Great to see you back. And let's give a hand to that first panel, our presenters, our overview. We're off to a great start, and we're here to continue it. We've got a great panel of federal leaders here with us today, and we're going to just jump right in. I'm going to ask our esteemed experts to introduce themselves, the role within your agency, as well. And so first to my left is Director Jill Floyd with the USDA, Arkansas State Director for USDA Rural Development. Actually, you can tell everyone who you are. You don't need me to do that. So let's, without further ado.
Hey, good morning, everyone. Pleasure to be here. My name is Jill Floyd, State Director for USDA Rural Development here in Arkansas. We cover the entire state, so 9 offices across the state, every county. We cover every county, anything that's rural, which is anywhere between 20,000 and 50,000, depending on our programs. We have over 70 programs, but everything we do is focused on rural. So great to be here today.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Adrienne Brown, and I'm the Director of the U.S. Small Business Administration, Arkansas District Office. And of course, the U.S. Small Business Administration's mission is to help businesses to start, grow, and recover. And so here in Arkansas, what we attempt to do is get out the word to all of the counties in Arkansas about SBA's programs. We are 5 people strong, and we are in Little Rock, and so we really rely on our resource partners and other entrepreneurial support organizations to get the word out. And so looking forward to the conversation today.
Hey, good morning, everybody. My name is Pete. I'm with the Federal Highway Administration. I'm the Deputy Division Administrator of the Arkansas Division. It says up here of Federal Highway Administration, I just want you to understand that every state has a local office for the Federal Highway Administration. So even though we're a nationwide firm, when you contact us, you're contacting the local people here in the state, and we're the ones who will help you. Happy to be here. I'm happy to fill you in on what we do as the Federal Highway Administration, how you can see it happening in your communities. And with that, I'll just turn it back over to the moderator.
All right. Thanks, Pete. Also on this panel, we have an HBCU graduate. Give it up for HBCUs. All right. We have a strong advocate for girls in STEM and women, and former commissioner for the status of women, and a former naval officer.
Naval officer, yes.
All right. So just fun facts, so we get to know each other while we spend the next 50 minutes together. Let's take a moment, y'all. Let's celebrate the Investing in America program. Let's give it a hand. Let's give it a hand. Just right here in this region, Arkansas, Mississippi, and Memphis, Tennessee, there's been $11.5 billion invested in Arkansas, Mississippi, and Memphis, Tennessee. Just to put that number in perspective, if you look at the entire state budget for the state of Arkansas and for the state of Mississippi for 1 year, that federal investment is 80% of the whole budget. So it's a lot of money. These are all about investments in our physical infrastructure, human capital, and a private sector that works for all. So with that backdrop, I'm going to turn to my colleagues again and just ask them to provide a little bit of an overview of your agency's priorities, specifically with regard to investing in America. And Director Brown with the SBA, we'll start with you.
Thank you so much. And so for the SBA, really trying to let small businesses know how the opportunities with the Investing in America programs are going to help them to grow their businesses really is our greatest priority. And so getting out into all of the communities to let them know about these opportunities is really paramount for the Small Business Administration. And we've done a lot of work to ensure that they do get the information that they need. And I think we'll talk about that a little bit more later, but that is really what we are attempting to do with Investing in America.
Mr. Ulick?
Hey, nice pronunciation of the name. The Federal Highway Administration is actually part of the US DOT, so we are one of the modes underneath the US DOT, and I'm sure everybody in the room here has heard of the IIJA, the Infrastructure Jobs Act, or the bill, Bipartisan Infrastructure Law. In there, it has a lot of grants that are out that are available to communities, to counties, to cities, to the state, on how they can apply for more money for the infrastructure. Now, we look at the highways, and it's not just highways, it's also city streets, it's local streets. If you're looking for something that has to do with like a water treatment facility or something, that's not on ours. We can't help you with that. But when you look at an infrastructure itself, when it has to do with transportation, that's where you'd come to us, and that's where we would be able to help you work through your state, work through your locals, and get the help you need, or help you fill out the grant, or at least get you to the point where you can find where the grant is located.
All right, and Director Floyd.
So for rural development, a big part of what we have focused on has been broadband. That has been a huge initiative for us. With our Reconnect program, ensuring that rural communities are both able to connect from the home to the infrastructure, but also making sure that we're putting the infrastructure into the rural communities, so that, you know, once you leave City Hall and you go, you know, down the road 2 miles to your farm, you can actually connect, because for us, high-speed internet is everything now. It's not a luxury, it's the new utility. And so you've got tractors that need internet access to run, because the tractors are now programmed to go out and you know, plow or cut or whatever it needs to do certain areas, but that is all programmed in, and so you have to have a reliable internet signal. And so those of you who live in rural areas, you know that this is a huge issue. And so this is where we've put just a tremendous amount of funding, is just making sure that our rural communities can connect. You know, same with our schools. You guys remember during the pandemic, folks didn't have access, and you were having to either, you know, folks were having to either take their kids to the library or the McDonald's parking lot. And so, you know, this really is the utility of the 21st century.
So piggybacking off of what Jill is talking about, we really are looking for small businesses that are in the business of doing some of that work here in Arkansas to really take advantage of those opportunities. And so, you know, we want them to ensure that they get those opportunities to keep the money right here in Arkansas.
That is a great point, and I love the way y'all piggybacked off of each other. We're going to be in conversation here. I do want to stay here for a minute, though, and Mr. Yelich, I'm going to ask you to just take a moment to help us reflect on perhaps one of the most visible monuments to the impact of investing in America, and that's the I-55 bridge over the Mississippi River, one of the $394 million. So let's just talk about that in the context of what it means to this regional economy. But then I also want you to just help us think through where there are opportunities for our rural communities as well.
Okay, well, just earlier you heard the West Memphis mayor speak. And I was here when we announced the grant, and I tell you, that guy is the most enthusiastic guy. And I really appreciate the enthusiasm from him, because it just shows how much it means to the local communities. A couple of years ago, there was a little problem on the I-40 bridge. And when that shut down the bridge it was actually a very short time for bridge shutdown. I mean, that was a very quick fix. I mean, they came together, but it highlighted the need to have alternate crossings across the Mississippi River. Because if you couldn't go across the I-55 bridge or the I-40, you got to go way out of your way to get around. And at the time, both Tennessee and Arkansas, the state DOTs, were looking at ways to make sure that we have the redundancy in our transportation system, a way to make sure that it's a reliable system, because without being able to move freight from one state to the other, or from West Coast to East Coast, and going through Memphis and West Memphis is a huge volume of traffic. If you have apples in Washington State and you want to get them to Florida, well, you're going to be coming through here on the interstate. That's how you do it. So Tennessee is the lead on this, and they were looking at the bridge, and they applied for the grant. And as you said, it was over $300 million, 394, I think. And that is not the full amount of the bridge. I mean, that's about 1/3 the amount. But without the communities coming together and developing a plan, coming up with a concept of how we're going to do this, what do we need to do to get this bridge built? What do we need to do to make sure we have the reliability and the redundancy in the transportation system so we can still get back and forth between our communities? When the I-40 bridge went down, there were a lot of local businesses on either side that had issues because every day people go from one side to the other, whether it's to a grocery store, or whether it's to the hospital, kids going to the school, or just living on one side and going the other for work. Now you have the huge backups. What can we do to make sure that doesn't happen again? So that's what this bridge is going to do, and that's what this grant is going to help do. I don't have a timeline on when it's going to be done. That's in the future. I don't have a crystal ball, and I don't have my paperwork with me. But what you also talk about is what can local communities do? The bill has, as I said earlier, they have a lot of different grants in there. There's bridge grants, there's planning grants, and traditionally, money from the Federal Highway Administration goes to the state DOTs to dole out or to use on the projects that they see. With Bill, there's a lot of direct recipients, which means it doesn't have to go through the state DOT. It can now come to a county, it can come to a city, it can come to a village, it can come to a local entity, working with your MPOs, your Metropolitan Planning Organizations. There are a lot of opportunities out there for anyone or any entity, not an individual, but any governmental entity can apply for a grant if they need something in their community. If you need something done on your main street, if you need something done with even stormwater, if you need a planning grant, there's a lot of opportunities out there. After we're done here, on the table right in the front here, I brought out a list of the different grants that Arkansas has received. I'm sorry, I don't have them for Tennessee, I just brought Arkansas. But we've received approximately 50 grants in our state, and most of these are small, little grants. For the cities that get them or the counties that get them, they seem large. In overall picture of schemes, it's small, but for the counties to get them, it's huge. And they can all apply for these. Working through the paperwork is sometimes a nightmare, and it's growing pains for everybody because it's a new program. I ask you to please just give us a little bit of wiggle room when we're going through the grant agreements with you because we're learning it at the same time. But there are the opportunities out there, and please apply for them.
Great. Director Brown, so Mr. Ulick mentioned a few things in his comments. He talked about the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law. He talked about the businesses that were affected by the access to transportation. I'm wondering, so the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law has resources in it to support federal, state, and local contracting, procurement. And so what steps is the SBA taking to advance these opportunities, especially among historically underserved businesses owned by women, people of color, and rural communities?
Sure. So the steps that we are taking are making sure that we get the information out as far and as wide as possible. We have hosted a number of webinars to talk about each of these efforts under the Bipartisan Information Law and the Inflation Reduction Act, CHIPS, and all of those. So all of these initiatives, we've hosted a number of webinars. We've put together a hub on our website where people can go and get information. It's a one-stop shop to give small businesses in particular information about how each one of these programs can benefit their business as well as what they need to do. We have worked with entrepreneurial support organizations and other organizations within the state to get the word out, as well as attending events such as this. And so these are the things that we are doing right now to help with getting the word out about these efforts, and we'll continue to do that. And so that's pretty much it, yeah.
Great. And so Director Floyd, Director Brown was mentioning all the efforts underway to get the word out about contracting opportunities. Now I know in a former life, you were also involved with procurement on the other side, within the private sector with Cummins and Ford. And So I'm wondering if there are things that you could share that small businesses can do to be competitive, to increase their chances of winning opportunities through those processes.
Sure. I must admit, and I probably shouldn't say this out loud, but sometimes working with the government can be challenging if you're not used to it, right? But from the procurement side, you know, when you're trying to win a bid, the thing that I see the most is people not understanding the cost structure and throwing a number at something. And so you can't be competitive if you're throwing a number at something when you're in the procurement space, right? You really have to understand all the nuts and bolts, all the little teeny tiny details, and it takes a lot of time. And so a lot of small business owners don't have the time because they're the business development, they're the sales guy, they're the operations guy, they're the everything guy or girl, and so they don't have time to go after these opportunities. And so, but from being on the other side of a procurement, you really have to take your time, understand what's in it, and really understand not only your cost, but if you have vendors or subcontractors, you need to understand their cost too, so you know if you're getting a good solid number before you put that bid in. So,
thank you. Very, very helpful. If you read the brief, The Economics of Investing in America, there's just a lot of themes that pretty much everyone in this room, I think, agrees with. You know, there's points made that if we're going to succeed, we must rebuild and strengthen local communities. We heard about local communities in the first panel. You know, place-based policies that create economic opportunities in underserved communities pay off with greater economic benefits. That's something we all know. And there's actually a study that estimates the economic benefits of policies that add jobs in an underserved community have actually 60% greater impact on job creation and job retention than regions that are booming. So again, lots there. So with this in mind, we heard a lot about efforts to get the word out, to raise awareness. But I really want y'all to dig in a little deeper on, you know, the steps the agency are taking to ensure that these unprecedented programs are accessible. So once folks know, okay, they're aware of it, but now I got to apply, or I got to find a partner, or I got to have a plan. What are the steps that your agency's taken to make that happen? And we'll just start with Director Floyd.
So for us, it's very similar to SBA, right? We have offices across the state, and so each of those offices is tasked with getting out into their region. So each of my offices has about 12 or 13 counties that they cover. And you know, they say if you want to get something done, you need to measure it. And so that's one of the things I measure for my directors is how much are you getting out? How many events have you been to? How many mayors have you talked to? How many judges have you talked to? How many community events have you been to? Because that's the only way we can get the word out, especially when you're in rural. You know, it's difficult in rural. Again, not just the internet access, but just in rural, people like to talk to each other face to face. So I can't just send people to a website, right? I've got to be there. So all of our offices are open. They're full service. We're there. And so people know that they can come to us. And so we do our community outreach events. Arlo, my new PIO, he has done a great job with the website, but we are also curating a list of partners, whether it's media, whether it's nonprofit, whether it's other governmental organizations. And anytime we've got a new program, some new funding, we are blasting that out. So we're getting the information in front of people. We're trying to reach you wherever you are. And people call me though. People do not hesitate to call me. So I'm working with a business owner now who said, hey, there's a program, a very popular program we have that we haven't talked about as we've been talking about small businesses. We have a very popular loan guarantee program. And so for folks who have difficulty getting funding from a traditional bank, they can come to us. We guarantee the loan. We guarantee 80% of the loan. So it's a very good, it's a very good deal for the bank. It's almost a no-brainer for the bank. And so I got a gentleman who called me. He said, hey, I've got this, I want to refinance my business. I've got a ton of equity, but it's a big deal. It's 25 million. And can you help me? Like, so, and he calls me like every other week, like, hey, so I'm, you know, okay, here's all the approved lenders, and, you know, here's some folks you can go talk to, and here's some folks who may have done this in the past. So I don't mind doing the personal touch, you know, but you got to be willing to do the legwork, right? I can't do the work for you, and I know how difficult that is for small business owners, because at the end, you're busy. But one of the questions he asked was like, hey, do you know somebody who's done this before? Do you know maybe a consultant? So don't be afraid of consultants. So any kind of way we can help you, like, I can't do it for you. I can't tell you who to use or what to do, but I can just say, like, hey, here are all of the resources that are available for you. So call me.
And I would like to rewind to talk about our 8A Business Development Program. It is a critical program that most small businesses are not taking advantage of here in the state of Arkansas. We have over 268,000 small businesses, but we only have 13 businesses in our 8A Business Development Program. And so we are looking for small businesses that can meet the criteria for being in that program. Once they are a part of the program, they get access to set-aside contracts. They get the opportunity to do joint ventures with other businesses. They get free training to help them look for contract opportunities. And so we really want to share more information about that program and get more businesses signed up to be a part of it. Now, the catcher is there's a one-time opportunity to be a part of it for 9 years. And so I say when you become a part of the program, you need to be strategic about that timing to do that. Because as Jill said, it's daunting working for the federal government, trying to get information and services. You have to do the work, though. It works if you work it, right? It works if you work it. So that program is available to small businesses, and again, we want to get more into our portfolio here in Arkansas.
And so as a just really prime example, Nadrian doesn't know this, I actually just hired an 8A vendor to come do some work for me in rural development.
Hey. Thank you.
Okay, I just want to start out by saying, Jill, you are right. Sometimes working with the federal government, it seems daunting, and it seems like an overwhelming amount of stuff that you have to do. But how we get around it a little bit, in my division in Federal Highways, in the Arkansas division, we recently hired a person that does nothing but grants. We have a grant coordinator, and that is her full-time job. And I'm telling you, she's busier than a one-armed paper hanger on a busy day. But she is always working, and she is learning the program, she's learning the systems. And we've also got it where everybody in my office, doesn't matter if you're the grant writer, you're the finance person, you're engineer, you're out meeting people all the time. You're going to the projects, you're going to the state, you're going to the MPOs, you're going to the towns. You're actually going out and meeting the people and see what they need and what they have. Now, traditionally, with the Highway Trust Fund, as I mentioned earlier, our money goes to the state, and then the state would divvy it out. With the new bill, Bipartisan Infrastructure Law, that's where you can get to the direct recipients. So if you have a grant-related question, I have a person that is their entire job. I hate to say go to the website, because you go to the website and you put it in Google or Yahoo or whatever, you can get up a million different things. Call our office. Call our office in Little Rock. Every state has their own office, but ours is in Little Rock. We're centrally located. Call and ask to speak to the grant coordinator. And if she can help you, she can either help you there or she can direct you where you need to go. Also, work with your state or your MPO or people who have done this before. Some of the larger cities in the state have applied for grants before. They know how to do it. They're more than happy to help the littler cities and villages because they've done it before. They know the hurdles you have to jump through. So don't be afraid to ask people. And as I tell everybody, don't email. Pick up the phone and call. If you pick up the phone and call, you're much more likely to get an answer quickly. It doesn't matter if you're calling me or you're calling anyone else out there. You want to talk to your bank? Pick up the phone and call. Don't email them. Email is a great thing if you don't need an answer right away, but calling or face-to-face, much better all the time.
All right. So there's your first takeaway. Don't email.
Okay, that's not the takeaway here. The takeaway is emails a follow-up. Calls are better.
Thank you. All right. Good clarification.
Don't
okay.
text. How's that? Don't text.
All right. We heard a lot from our local folks in the previous panel, and we heard about getting money back into the community. That was something that Mr. Bateman said directly at the end. How do we get money back into the community? Because I think we've done a great job talking about small business. I want to really hone in on our local governments, we've heard about when the opportunity's ready, you got to be ready. What are the things that your agencies are doing to make sure that communities can be ready, whether it's audits, whether it's planning, design, construction? We heard about that. Even down to consultants. I heard consultants, there's a wide range of consultants. Some are really good at what they do. Some have questionable track records when it comes to working with community. So, Mr. Ulick, let's start with you on this one, and we'll run it back this way.
Okay, I don't know how to exactly answer the question because I don't work with the small businesses. I work with other agencies. But let me just give you a little example of something here. Jonesboro, it's like a medium to larger size. For Arkansas, it's a large town, but for anywhere else in the United States, it's a medium to small town. They used to have a mayor there, Harold Perrin. I don't know if anyone knows him. Fantastic mayor. I mean, very good advocate for his town. He had no problem. I'd get phone calls from him. He's like, "Hey, Pete." Like, "Yeah, Mayor, what can I do for you?" He goes, "I want to show you something. Can you come up and see me?" "Okay, when?" We'd go see him. And he's like, "Okay, I want to show you this. We just built this park for the city. Beautiful park, but now how do we get to it?" "Okay, well, now you're talking because that's infrastructure. Now I can help you. I can't help you with the park, but now let's look and see what we can do for the roads. Is it on the national highway system? Is it a local road?" It depends on what type of funding you use, depending on what type of road it is. But the smaller communities, by advocating for the communities, and most mayors out there are great advocates. That's what their job is, and they're really good at it. They got to be willing to actually make the phone calls and make the inquiries on what they can do for their community. Again, I can't help them with the broadband. That's one of these two here. They do a great job at it. But if you call up our office, I have engineers that cover and they are engineers, but they don't just do engineering. They cover the entire state. I can send somebody out to look and see if it's something we can help you with. Or if it's something that we have to have the state help with, we can do that.
And I would say that for us, really partnering with you all to ensure that we can come out into your communities to talk about the programs that we have is going to be the best way for us to really work together. SBA particularly supports small businesses, and so the way that we can help you is by making sure that your communities are armed and equipped with the information that we have to thrive and to start businesses. So.
And for us, it's providing TA grants, technical assistance grants. So we provide grants to organizations who can then help, whether it's our business owners, whether it's our municipalities, sort of navigate our process. And that's the primary way, that's the best way. My staff is small, we're growing, we're small. Now, if you're a business, definitely call my B&I team. Derek is sitting back there in the back. I'm going to embarrass him, the tall guy with the tan shirt. He does a phenomenal job with our business and industry guarantee loan. Those are some of the smartest people in the state. And their whole job is to help you get financing. So if you're a small business owner, you want to reach out to our B&I team. If you're a community or municipality, again, we've got some TA providers who we are happy to connect you with, who can help you sort of navigate our process.
Likewise, we do as well. In fact, Jack Poff from the Arkansas Small Business Technology and Development Center is here, and they certainly help people no matter what stage of their small business they're in, whether they're in ideation or been in business for 20 years. And so you definitely want to take advantage of ASB TDC as a resource here locally. And of course, my team is willing and able to travel wherever needed. So.
All right, and ASBDTC is the?
Arkansas Small Business and Technology Development Center.
All right, thank you. All right, so we are getting close to wrap-up time. So as we get ready to close, I'm wondering if you each could speak to strategies or best practices that you've seen local leaders implement to take advantage of investing in America. And if you can do this, I know I didn't ask this during prep call, but if you have a story that you're really proud of where you're able to help someone out, get someone connected to resources, if you're able to weave that into strategies and best practices, that would be a great way to bring us home. So who wants to go? Director Brown.
I'll start. One of the things that we have done, and I won't say that it's a particular person, but a specific segment, under the manufacturing IAC implementation, which allows manufacturers to get up to $300,000 to do energy improvement projects. We hosted, along with the Arkansas Economic Development Center, a webinar to reach small and medium-sized manufacturers. And so we really want to do more things like that to ensure that these businesses, whether you're an electrician, HVAC, or a plumber, to take advantage of some of the energy efficiency projects, home rebates and so forth, tax credits. We want to make sure that they have that information. And so really want to make sure that we can work with you all to ensure that these types of businesses are taking advantage fully of the projects that are out there in the program.
Mr. Ulick?
Okay, I already gave my story about Mr. Perrin, so I'm not going to give that one. But what I will tell you is a little bit more about Federal Highway Administration is, as I mentioned, we have engineers that cover all the state. I got a group of engineers, each take a different chunk of the state. I also have 2 planners who split the state in half, and what they do is they work with all the MPOs in the state. So if you need information with the MPO and you want to meet with one of my planners, we could do that. I have an engineer who's a safety engineer who her job is safety. She covers the entire state as far as safety projects. If you have something that you think you want to discuss with her, you're more than welcome to call her and do that. One of the biggest grant things that's out right now, one of the biggest grant programs that's out right now is called SS4A, Safe Streets for All. And those can be for any city, any community. It's how you make a street safer in your town. Whether it's sometimes El Dorado, they went and actually shrunk from 4 lanes to 3 lanes, slowed the traffic down a little bit, put some parking there, and it's a safer street. It doesn't have to necessarily be making more capacity. Sometimes it's shrinking capacity to let people drive through your community safer. Sometimes it's putting in sidewalks. Sometimes it's just planning what you need to do for the future. So if there's something you want to do in your community and you want to bounce it off somebody, we have people that you can talk to. Sometimes our answer might be you have to work with the MPO or you have to work with the state, but you're not going to know that unless you call us and ask us. So if you have questions, we can hopefully direct you the right way. Now, you always hear that joke about we're from the government, we're here to help. We really are. We are from the government. We really are here to help. We really want Arkansas and Tennessee and all the communities down south to have safe streets, to have livable communities where people want to live.
So I'll just talk real quickly about one community in particular. There are many, but one in particular who has done a really good job of sort of weaving it all together, and that's Dumas. They have a fantastic mayor, and he wants everything. And so 2 years ago, we came with the then undersecretary and did a tour of the Delta. We started in Dumas, kind of woved our way down and ended up in Monticello. That mayor, of all the folks we visited, has been relentless. I mean, we have put TA dollars into his community so that folks could go in, and listen to his community and understand what they want so they could put together a game plan to execute. We've worked with them and talked about broadband, and he wants to do housing, and he wants to do everything. And he's got some unique challenges, but the point is he has looked at our programs and said, hey, these are the three or four things that I really want to focus on and get done. And so we've been able to kind of work with him and start to implement using some of our programs. Now, he'll have to go, you know, maybe we have some sister agencies that he may have to go work with. You know, we've got Farm Service Agency, we've got NRCS, that he'll have to go work with, but that's okay, right? Because what he'll be able to do is what we call stack dollars, stack investments. And so that's just one story of one mayor of many who has just been relentless in advocating for his city and making sure that he gets all the dollars that are available.
That's great. Thank you, Director Floyd. I'm sure all of us in this room know at least 1, 2, or 10 relentless people fighting for our communities. We heard a lot of things here today. We heard about the engineers who are available, the planning resources with the Federal Highway Administration. We also had a call to action to actually call when there's planning resources needed or questions. We heard about grant coordinators who are also available, people who know about funding diverse businesses who are in USDA. And so I think as we get ready to move on to our next federal panel, again, encourage you to just look for ways that we can use all of these resources to get all of the dollars, as Mr. Bateman said, back into our communities. Please join me in thanking our wonderful panel.
Am I on? Okay. I think it's still morning, so good morning again, everyone. I hope this is, you're finding this helpful. I think we're going to try to bring it home with a very strong group of federal experts to share information about the resources at HUD, at EPA, and at the Department of Treasury. I've had the opportunity to work with these agencies. They've been critically important for this region, just bringing billions of dollars into the Deep South. And they've been great partners to Hope over the years. We have had the opportunity to work with, we hosted the previous HUD Secretary Fudge, and she was very clear about she saw her role as making sure that communities who had often been on the wrong side of these resources were not going to experience that under her watch. And Secretary Todman is continuing that work. I really appreciate their leadership. Administrator Regan has been to Mississippi 4 or 5 times. You know, we had a little water issue in Jackson, Mississippi, some of you may have heard about. And he, on the first day when the president, I think when the Inflation Reduction Act was announced, he was in Jackson, meeting at a school and making sure that folks there knew these resources were there for them. And, you know, and Treasury, I was at the Department of Treasury last week. Secretary Yellen couldn't make it. I think she was under the weather. But Deputy Secretary Adeyemo was there, and quite honestly, he is one of the reasons that we organize these forums. He made the mistake when I was in the room saying he was serious and Treasury was serious about making sure that these resources reach the middle of the country, places that were historically under-resourced, and he said he wanted to make sure that his team was got out and got the word out. And so I raised my hand and said, okay, we can help you with that. And so we've organized these forums. And so, Ron, I really appreciate you and all of you being here. And so, again, these agencies just have a treasure trove of resources, dedicated leadership, and we're here with senior officials to help us unpack that and let us know how we can tap into that more effectively. Go around and ask you all to introduce yourselves and share a little bit about your roles with the agency. I'll talk to you.
Thank you so much. Hello? Can you hear me? All right. My name is Erthea Nance. I'm the Regional Administrator for Region 6 of the Environmental Protection Agency. My region covers all of Arkansas, Louisiana, Texas, Oklahoma, and New Mexico. And in that region, we also have 66 tribal nations. And so I have a very large area to cover. I do a lot of travel. It is a pleasure to be here in Arkansas today. I want to talk a little bit about, in addition to introducing myself, talking about how what we've been doing in this administration, how different it is. There was an excellent introduction to this event this morning. I don't know the gentleman's name, but he showed a lot of maps that essentially showed the systemic result of the history of inequity and how that is really inside almost the bones of our region. And so we don't just give some grants and say that we've solved that problem. That's impossible because it's in the bones. So part of what this administration did when they started, and I think it was ingenious, is they wanted to change how we work, how we think. And yes, they provided a lot of money, more than in history. I mean, $100 billion for Bill and Ira together is more than in history. So yeah, he put the money on the table. But then he said environmental justice, he called it, he used those words. He wrote them into the executive orders. You know, we made that a way of working that's different than how we had worked before. And then he also named climate change. He used those words. You have to remember, it wasn't too long ago when using those words in government was not okay. So he used those words. Climate change, the biggest threat of our lifetime. We have to do something about it. And so we've been using the money that is fantastic to have, but using it toward the goals of environmental justice and doing something about climate change.
Good morning. My name is Candace Valenzuela, and I am HUD, so the Department of Housing and Urban Development's Southwest Regional Administrator. I cover the same territory as Dr. Nance. That is Texas, New Mexico, Oklahoma, Louisiana, and the beautiful state of Arkansas and 66 tribal territories. And it has been an absolute honor and pleasure both to work for this administration and to work under both former Secretary Fudge and Acting Secretary Todman for this very simple reason. They believe unequivocally in the investment in our communities. And when they talk about the investment in our communities, it wasn't just about making sure that large cities get huge and visible wins. It was about reaching those localities that couldn't necessarily be touched because even though money would be allocated to them, it would be almost impossible for it to get out. And I feel like we've had a lot of conversation about that this morning. I'm excited to talk about what HUD has been doing. But I think the one thing that I will add is that I have been personally touched by the work of HUD. When I was about 3, my brother was an infant. My parents split. My mother left the Army. We moved in with some relatives, and it became untenable, as that might tend to happen. And I ended up becoming homeless, living in a kiddie pool outside of a Texas gas station. And a HUD voucher was the key to my future. So thinking about that in a very individual level has been incredible for me, but thinking about that in a more macro level and thinking about the systems that are in place that could help a homeless veteran mother like mine, or a system that could put that opportunity in households, in communities to begin with, so that we're not talking about people falling on hard times needlessly, is the work that we are trying to do both at HUD and I think in this administration. We recognize that people have been suffering far too long under far too preventable causes, and it's time to roll up our sleeves and get to work. So excited to have this conversation with y'all.
So good morning. My name is Ronnie Newman. I am a senior advisor at the U.S. Department of the Treasury. I work and am based in Washington, D.C., but I will also note I grew up down the road in Memphis, Tennessee, so it is good to be home. My role at Treasury is implementation of the Inflation Reduction Act. As you've heard, I'm sure, many times, the IRA is the largest investment this nation has ever made in clean energy and climate action. And it is estimated that nearly $400 billion of funding will flow out of Washington in the implementation of that bill. What is not said quite as much, but is also important, is that the majority of those funds are channeled through tax incentives, through tax credits that flow out of the Treasury Department. And a big part of my role is ensuring that folks take advantage of those opportunities, because as I often say, there is something in the IRA for everybody, whether you're a state and local government, a nonprofit, an individual consumer, a housing developer, a small business, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And so the key is making sure people see those opportunities and leverage them to the maximum extent, and this conversation is part of that process. So good to be here.
Thank you all. You said $400 billion, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's real money. Let's get that down to Memphis and down the river and all the towns and parishes. As well as you, I really appreciate you sharing your story, your personal story. I grew up in El Paso.
Yes.
And it's El Paso in the border communities, there's too much overlap and similarity to some of the maps that my colleague Keod Burt showed this morning. We work with several groups in persistent poverty counties across the United States, in Appalachia, in Central Valley of California, on the border, across the Deep South, and there's an unfortunate, but I don't think coincidental overlap, as was displayed in Keod's Burt's policy director's presentation this morning, correlation between race and poverty. On the President's Day 1 executive order, placed priority on driving resources into historically under-resourced communities and communities of color. The Justice 40 initiative is a priority, and I would really appreciate it if each of you could talk about some of the initiatives, resources that are available to your respective agencies through the Invest in America initiative, but also that ties to the President's Justice 40 priorities. And so,
yeah, I'd like to get started with that. So Justice 40 is the metric that's used to show that we're doing what the policy is designed to do, which is to channel money toward places that have been underinvested in the past. And so 40% of particular parts of the money that's available has to be channeled to those communities. So in my region, we're about between 70 and 80%. That's what we're doing. So we're doing well on that, on channeling the money. Some of the other resources available, first of all, the communities, many of the communities that are receiving money have been under-resourced and are not really used to receiving large grants. And so we've created training centers. They're called Thriving Communities Technical Assistance Centers. This is a resource for communities that are looking for grants. So you walk in, or you call, or you email, or you however you get in contact with them, and I have a table in the back with folks ready to give out the information, handouts. How do you get to a tic-tac? We call them tic-tacs. And they help you figure out, you tell them what you want to do, and then they help you figure out which of the many grants that are available, which one you'd be competitive for and you could get. And then they help you figure out how to apply. They help you through all of the steps. So that's a really important resource. And for my region, we have 2 tic-tacs. One is at the Deep South Center for Environmental Justice in New Orleans, Louisiana. And the second one is, forget what they call it, but it's at New Mexico State University in Las Cruces, New Mexico. Those are the 2 tic-tacs. Anybody in this region can use either one. And then the next thing that was created is called a grant maker. The grant maker actually is the source of money and gives that money out. And so our grant maker for the region is the Robert Bullard Center at Texas Southern University. That's the grant maker. So those are 3 resources to get to the money.
thank you. If you could, just for those who may not be familiar with Dr. Bullard, could you share a little bit about who this bad brother is?
So Dr. Robert Bullard, originally from Alabama, is well known as the preeminent scholar of environmental justice. I believe it's at least a 40-year career. Last I counted was 18 books. He's a professor, a distinguished professor at Texas Southern University. And just to be open and transparent, I am also a former professor at Texas Southern University, worked closely with Dr. Bullard for many years. And so we have now brought in to this new policy the leading scholar in that field at an HBCU. So in order to get to the money, you have to actually go to an HBCU and talk to the leading scholar of environmental. That's what we're talking about.
So I thought it might be helpful for you to hear that story. You know, he is, again, incredible individual. I had the privilege to meet him. And who's the sister at New Orleans? Doris, Wright.
Beverly Wright. She's at the Deep South. She's at the Undertaker.
Beverly Wright, one of his proteges. And really incredible insight. One of his books is called Dumping on Dixie. If you haven't read it, I recommend it. It really tells a story that many of us already know. You know, disproportionately toxic waste finds its way into the most vulnerable low-income communities, which are disproportionately communities of color. And so again, I really, it says a lot about the priorities of the administration that Dr. Bullard is one of their primary advisors. Also, got to give a shout out to Dr. Nance here, a Stanford and Cal trained civil engineer, author. I think one of your books, Engineers and Contracts, I saw one of the chapters is The Promise and Failures of Development. So again, font of knowledge here. I really encourage you to tap into to this panel and their expertise. Administrator Valenzuela, you tell us a little bit about some of the Invest in America and Justice 40 resources available through HUD.
Sure thing, and I'm going to bridge right over from one of the Thriving Communities Technical Assistance Programs that HUD is doing, and this is in partnership with a lot of other federal agencies, including EPA, Energy, and many others. And this is actually helping communities that are looking to invest in transportation. They're getting Department of Transportation money either directly or pass through the state. And we are helping them to figure out how to layer in housing and equitably layer in housing if that's what we're doing. So I don't think I needed to expound too much in this room about how highways have been used to harm communities. Highways specifically have been used to harm Black communities. And so this TA is very much a conscious unwinding of that harm. And in addition to unwinding that harm, creating the economic opportunity and helping folks have access to the transportation they need so that they can get to work, so that their communities can thrive, so that they can continue to grow in economic independence. And so this technical assistance, it's really amazing when people think about technical assistance. They may not necessarily understand how much into the details some of these folks can get. They can help people even draw out financial plans or figure out how to make some of those overall master plans that undergird where that money is supposed to go. A lot of our folks are sitting there waiting to do this. We have quite a few $1 million, and I'm sorry I don't remember off the top of my head, unspent that we need to get out the door as fast as possible. So effectively, we're waiting for your call. Reggie is right there. He's a field office director for Department of Housing and Urban Development in the state of Arkansas. Reggie, do you mind standing really quickly and waving? We also have DCTA, which is actually for even smaller communities than that. So if you're talking about, this is actually distressed cities and persistent poverty communities, under 50,000 people. So if you have over 20% poverty, if you have an unemployment rate that is over 9%, and again, under 50,000 people, you may be eligible for this technical assistance. There was a phrase I heard used earlier by Martha Claire. She was talking about communities being opportunity ready, and this is effectively what that is. When you're talking about a lot of smaller rural communities, having a hard time kind of banding together and getting those resources in order to apply for those bigger grants or to have that bandwidth or capacity to do that is hard. So DCTA as well as TCTA, again, these are all technical assistance opportunities, help create that training that you're going to need within your community to receive that grant, but also help create plans in ways that might be otherwise very, very costly. So those are just a couple of things that we have that will get money out there or pull money out or elicit more money from the federal government in a way that helps drive economic opportunity.
How many folks know places that have over 20% poverty, unemployment over 9%, and fewer than
50,000 people.
50,000 people. Anybody in those communities here in the room? Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Yes.
No, as I mentioned, I was at Treasury last week at a meeting, and people were so excited that Ronnie was going to be coming to this meeting. I think not just because this is your you have roots here, but again, they dug a little bit in your background. A Morehouse man and a Yale-trained lawyer. Worked at ACLU, organizing policies and working with local, state and federal agencies and organizations to drive policy to level the playing field. And I think you're also got an investment banking background. So I think the administration has someone who knows how to get these resources to the ground. Ronnie, what are some of the, Inflation Reduction Act, the $400 billion, what are some of the strategies for getting those resources to the ground, into the communities that need it most?
I appreciate that. So I'll say a few quick things about our focus, in particular on lower income communities. First, you should know that the legislation itself explicitly includes that emphasis. So for instance, say you want to do a solar installation, and that solar installation will cost you $100,000. You're making a $100,000 investment. The baseline tax credit is 30%. So at a baseline, you're receiving $30,000 from the federal government to offset a portion of that cost. But if that project is happening in a low-income community, that 30% might become 40%, might become 50%. And so those types of structural devices have been woven into the legislation to try to help put effectively a thumb on the scale and better ensure that investment reaches underserved communities in a real way. Similarly, if you think about a tax credit we refer to as 30C, it applies to EV chargers and alternative fuel refueling stations. That credit is only applicable if the installation is happening either in a low-income urban community or a rural community. So again, there are these structural ways in which we are trying to make sure that the thing that has happened with other pieces of legislation in the past won't happen again with the Inflation Reduction Act. It has also informed and shaped how we do outreach. So we spend disproportionate amounts of our time engaging in the communities we really want to make sure see these opportunities, and that's evidenced in being here in West Memphis today. That was evidenced in being in Raleigh last week. I'll be in Atlanta next week. A week or so after that, I'll be in Shreveport with a collection of black churches. And my colleagues on the team maintain a similar travel schedule that is getting out there in the world, but getting out there in the world in a particular way, trying to make sure that certain segments of the population really take advantage of the opportunities that we have presented here. Maybe the last thing I'll say, because the proof will ultimately be in the pudding. We'll get more and more data as the years pass. We're only just getting started with this. But we had what I found to be a reassuring data point get released in August when we released our first tranche of data about the consumer credits that are woven into the IRA. And so we found that for 2023, upwards of 3.4 million households had made claims related to heat pumps, insulation, windows, doors, et cetera, et cetera. And those claims amounted to immediate cost savings of more than $8.4 billion. So more money in people's pockets. But the most important, in many ways, takeaway is that we found that nearly half of those claims had been made by households with household income less than $100,000. And that really meant a lot because, again, we have a priority in ensuring that the impact of this legislation is felt in an inclusive and equitable manner.
Thank you. I really have to applaud you for you and your colleagues for how you're showing up in these communities and the groups that you're providing this information to. We did a survey as we are fortunate to be a recipient of EPA resources for the Solar for All program. That's to support residential solar. We've got 92 million, I think, for Arkansas and 66 for Mississippi to lower energy costs in residential, to advance residential solar initiatives. But our survey showed us that people didn't believe these resources were for them. I think they wanted to see what it meant for them. They're not often the resources go to more affluent places, and so seeing models, people who are demonstrating proof of concept, making it real for them is critical. And so again, the conversations you all having are so important. Dr. Nance, as I said, we work closely with EPA. EPA announced $27 billion in funding designed to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund. Can you talk a little bit about how these resources will benefit places like West Memphis
and so we're giving those are electric or propane buses that they're not the diesel buses that we all grew up with. These are completely quiet buses. They have air conditioning, and they don't use any gasoline. So that reduces greenhouse gases as well. Then you have community scale monies that are given out. I was really happy to give out $500,000 to a small community in Houston, a community that I had worked with as a professor. And this, for them, $500,000 for their community-based monitoring system for air monitoring was groundbreaking. It was transformational for them. So to be able to be there at the ceremony and give them that big check was terrific. So things are happening on multiple scales. We have right now a large grant that I would like to see almost half of this room apply for. The Notice of Funding Opportunity, which is called a NOFO. The NOFO is due November 21st, so there's still time. I would like everyone to go talk to Devon. Devon, can you raise your hand, please, and stand up? I want everybody to go to the table and get some information about this grant. Don't worry that you don't know what to use it for yet. We'll help you figure that out. Just know that you're just know that you're all eligible for it. And if you want to partner with a larger organization that can really handle the paperwork, well, we have Mr. Bynum right here. We have other groups that could do that. And we can help you figure out the partnerships because we have the Tic Tacs, we have the grant maker, we have all of the things in place that we need to hook you up with that grant. I don't know if I answered your question.
No, that was perfect. Thank you. Thank you. I have to brag a little bit on my team. Kiad showed some of the data that comes out of our policy shop. We get that data from the communities, the people we work with, and we take that data and we we jump on the table, we distill it, we engage with philanthropy, banks, corporations, but government, particularly in the Deep South, it's important to go to federal government because the policy environment doesn't always favor communities like those we serve in the Delta, and so going to the federal government, and we in some of the early legislation that was crafted after the pandemic and that has carried forward through the Inflation Reduction Act, we provided data that showed the disparities and who gets these resources and who don't. From the initial legislation that was put forward by Chairwoman Waters mentioned the data that showed there should be, to put a thumb on the scale and put 40% more in those communities that need it most. And so I really appreciate that the administration and people like Chairwoman Waters are listening to the communities and then converting that into action. So it's what you, your voice is heard, and in telling your stories and making sure policymakers hear it is critically important. Candace, we heard Mayor McClendon talk about the need for housing here in West Memphis and across the country. Owner-occupied rental housing challenges are limiting opportunity. Fewer people are able to buy a home because of interest rates and insurance. So what are some of the strategies, programs that HUD is pursuing to help address these needs?
So I'll start with the insurance. We actually just had a summit with leaders in insurance agencies at HUD headquarters, and I think we had a really productive conversation. I think it's time that we start having that conversation about what real costs look like when it comes to builders and insuring disaster-prone communities, but also what we're responsible for as the federal government, as state governments, as city governments in ensuring that communities are habitable. And part of that is also building in order to preserve current housing stock. We have a couple of ways that we're doing that. We have the CDBG mitigation program, and that's we have something like $16 billion available to communities that have recently experienced disasters, and that money goes toward either building infrastructure or building or fixing housing in order to help make sure that they're able to withstand storms or withstand winds or whatever happens to be the disaster that is more likely in its specific region. We're also, as a part of the Inflation Reduction Act, implementing the Green and Resilient Retrofit Program, or the GRRP. Out of the Inflation Reduction Act, we got $4 billion in loan money, and the loan is incredibly low interest and insanely repayable. Literally, these apartment owners are able to pay these loans back after they've paid off all of their expenses for the month every month. We have about almost $1 billion in grant money, and what that goes toward, it goes toward making roofs better to withstand, again, storms and wind. Works on that HVAC so that you have better windows, again, to withstand storms, but also to have better cooling and heating, putting money in folks' pockets. What it has done also is that, in Port Arthur, Texas, I would never expect this, but an apartment builder, they're using the funds to do all of the things that I just listed and more, but they're also putting charge spaces in low-income housing so that folks can take advantage of some of the cost savings that come with electric vehicles. And one of the things that I like about the implementation of the GRRP program is that they had 3 different tranches with 3 different levels of I don't want to say scrutiny, but rules. So they had an awards pot for bigger organizations that have require a lot of oversight, a lot of scrutiny, mid-size and small ones, so that you're not having to have this one-size-fits-all approach to folks that are just trying to increase housing in their communities. The other thing that we're doing so many things. We have a new funding opportunity on the street. It's called the Pro Housing Grant, or Pathways to Removing Obstacles. And it works with cities that have already been doing some of that work. What are your zoning ordinances look like? What are you doing in order to increase affordable housing? And if you have been making that effort and putting in that work, and you have a plan to do more, but it's super difficult to implement that plan because you might need to replace some of the infrastructure. There might be an issue with plumbing. You might have office buildings or buildings that might be able to be easily redone or refitted so that they can become residential. HUD has been looking over these plans and then awarding money to implement these plans so that cities can either build on more housing so they could use it for building, or build the infrastructure that would create more opportunities for more housing for lower income communities. So we're really aware of the fact that throughout the country we have a housing shortage, and the numbers land us somewhere around 5 million. Some say more, some say less. I don't give much truck in those. And people are suffering. I never thought I would see the day that Fayetteville would be declaring a housing state of emergency, but they did, and I think that's a real wake-up call to folks. As it's a nice community, but there's a lot of nice communities that they've been telling. I'm a geriatric millennial. They've been telling us that we just don't want to live in places that are affordable. We just don't want to live away from New York. We just don't want to live away from Los Angeles. And the reality is that the housing prices of New York and Los Angeles have been coming to us wherever we are, and home ownership has been farther and farther out of reach. And so we've been working to act with that urgency to build more, to preserve more, to make as much as possible available.
Well, thank you for the urgency. Maybe on shaky ground here, but is it safe to presume that some of the resources you described can be paired with the EPA resources? All of these, we want to make these homes more energy efficient, lower energy costs. Can these resources be used in tandem?
Oftentimes, and it's encouraged.
Ronnie, we often hear that tax credits are only available to for-profit organizations, and I think the case is different with the clean energy tax credits. Could you share some about what is direct pay? What are some of the resources that nonprofits and others can take advantage of that they may not be as familiar with?
So I love that question. I really appreciate that you brought that up, because I don't think people have fully sort of gotten their heads around how revolutionary this piece of the Inflation Reduction Act has been. So Bill mentioned direct pay. It was a novel provision woven into the IRA. And it matters a great deal because historically, tax credits were only relevant to folks that paid federal income taxes. You were using the tax credit to offset a tax bill, and that worked well for you if you had a big tax bill, but there are a broad spectrum of entities that don't regularly pay federal income taxes. State and local governments, churches, public universities, community centers, child care facilities, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And one of the great things that happened with the Inflation Reduction Act is we created an authority that would allow all of those entities to also tap into the value of tax credits. So instead of receiving a tax offset, you essentially receive a tax-free cash payment. So if you go back to the hypo I provided earlier, you make a $100,000 investment and you qualify for a $40,000 tax credit. If you are a tax-exempt entity, you follow the process, you submit your information, and the IRS sends you a check for $40,000, as opposed to you taking advantage of an offset for $40,000. And that's a really big deal because it unlocks all sorts of opportunities for tax-exempt entities. And so, I mentioned being in Raleigh. Wake Tech, a community college, has installed geothermal heat pumps to provide heating and cooling to its campus, and they are having a portion of those costs provided by the federal government. Also, I visited the Chapel of the Cross, a local church right there in Chapel Hill. Again, they've done a major solar and battery installation, and once again, a significant portion of the cost provided by the federal government, and all taking advantage of this direct pay authority that I do think is truly revolutionary. And so part of the reason we're doing so much outreach is because we have this large segment of actors that have historically not engaged very much with the IRS, that we need to see the IRS now as a source of capital as they think about large projects. Maybe one more quick point, going back to your question about how many of these opportunities are complementary, and going back to your question about reaching low-income households. I like to lift up innovative initiatives and programs when I travel, because what I'm hoping is people will hear them and they'll just replicate them in a sort of new geography. And so residential solar is an opportunity that any of us that own homes can take advantage of. And in almost all instances, it will reduce your monthly energy costs. Maybe 5%, maybe 20%, maybe 50%, depending on a handful of circumstances. The IRA seeks to catalyze more transitions by providing a tax credit. Well, the individual tax credit in this instance is not refundable. And so that creates a challenge for lower income individuals, because if you don't have sufficient tax liability, the tax credit can't help you. That's where you need creativity. That's where you need innovation. And so you've had nonprofits start programs in which they step in and purchase the solar installation and lease it out to the low-income household. And so when you have those scenarios play themselves out, you help that low-income homeowner because, one, they don't need the upfront cost that would be associated with purchasing it outright, and two, they get around the fact that they don't have sufficient tax liability to fully capture the value of that tax credit. And so these programs essentially transition people from the grid to their own solar system. And so you may move immediately from a monthly utility bill that's $120 a month to an $80 lease payment. And so nothing's really changed. You're getting the power you always got, but you're getting it from a different source, and you're getting it at a much reduced cost. And so there are lots of opportunities like that that are out there where you can, leverage the tax credits and potentially also leverage, the nonprofit can leverage low interest, low cost financing through GGRF, and again, unlock these really unique opportunities for low income communities all over the country. So I think it's a really exciting time, and the key is just making sure people see the spectrum of opportunities that are out there.
Thank you. So nonprofits, local municipalities,
Rural electric cooperatives,
rural electric co-ops,
tribal groups.
Just thinking how many of the communities that are scattered throughout our region don't have large corporations, large private employers. They are dominated by government and nonprofit. And so these entities are available to take advantage of direct pay. They get written a check.
Mm-hmm.
And is there a cap on the amount for direct pay?
So another important point to flag, you're doing really well with this moderator thing. So my colleagues at HUD and EPA and DOE and DOT, they have these amazing grant programs that if you're eligible, you should take advantage of them. In my part of the sort of federal ecosystem, we're sort of administering tax credits, and a unique difference in my part of the ecosystem is that for almost all of the tax provisions that I'm speaking about today, we're talking about effectively uncapped pools of funds. So this is not a scenario in which there's a fixed dollar amount and there are applicants from all over the country, racing to the door to get their application in because they want to make sure they sort of make the cut before that pool of resources is tapped out. In the tax credit context, we're essentially talking about a limitless pool of funds. And so if you meet the criteria, you can get the funds. And so that is also a very important element that you should keep in mind. So one, if you're a tax-exempt entity, you can essentially receive a tax-free cash payment from the IRS to cover a significant portion of an investment. And if you meet the requisite criteria, you can feel confident that it's coming because it's non-competitive and it's essentially uncapped. So those two features are two big takeaway points that I hope you take with you. And the best part of my week, and it's happening slowly because this is the first year of running the program, but the best part of my week is when one of the applicable entities emails me a picture of their CFO finance person holding up their IRS direct paycheck. It is, and hopefully we will see many, many more of those instances as the years pass.
Limitless, non-competitive checks written to nonprofits, municipalities, non-taxable entities. Folks, get your money. get your money, please. You referenced, Candace, you referenced Martha Claire's mentioning of communities that are not opportunity ready. And in so many cases, she talked also about these municipalities and local organizations who just don't have the same resources, financial or human resources, that larger, more affluent places may have. And so you're saying you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make them drink. How do we get these communities more ready to drink? You talked about the Tic Tacs. What are some of the strategies you've seen that have been effective in positioning these communities, these organizations, to take advantage of the resources? You shared some story earlier, Ronnie. Are there other stories or examples that you all might lift up that these our guests might consider that to help them tap into these resources?
Well, yes. Devon? Raise your hand. So Devon can provide access to the TIC-TAC. Those are the Thriving Community Technical Assistance Centers that can guide you into which grant or grants would work for what you want to do, and can just give you an introduction to all the grants, really at more of a person-to-person level. And so that you can, absorb it and understand it and have a handout and things like that. Really, that's what the TIC-TACs were created for. I would really highly recommend it. I've also started a robust environmental justice group within Region 6, within my office. The director of that group, Dr. Eunice Varghese, can you please stand up? She is the director. We have a staff of 20 environmental justice specialists that she directs. And that group puts on roundtables every month, summits every year. There's a Friday newsletter that goes out. To get to the newsletter, go to R6EJ, that's Region 6EJ, R6EJ at epa.gov, and you will automatically receive all of the updates for all of the grants every Friday. So go get your money, like he said.
I will say that coming into convenings like these and not just talking to experts but talking to each other is one of the biggest pathways to success. Once you all are able to sit down and compare notes and see what's working and what's not working, that's huge in moving the ball forward. But that's just the first step. The next part is, as I'll say, yell at us. Yell at USDA, yell at EPA, yell at HUD. ask us to come in, ask us to provide some of that support, we're absolutely happy to do that. I think I was listening to a gentleman earlier say, call us. Yes, please call us. I'll take the email as well, though. I will take the phone calls. I will take the emails. If you want us to sit down and have a conversation with you about how to get to yes, that's something that we're happy to do. And in fact, we've been working on our structure internally to make that even easier. We have the Office of Community Planning Development at HUD. And for a long time, we had 66 offices reporting to one person in Washington, D.C. And those 66 offices were responsible for getting a lot of that grant money out in the community. And so I can't really describe what that is like, but it's not a great model. And so now we have regional directors that have the same state breakdown as the one that I have. And what they are tasked with, it's not just an oversight and saying, okay, how do we keep people out of jail, which is super important, but how do we use this money the way that it was intended? How do we get communities that may not necessarily have fancy lawyers or fancy grant writers to yes? And how do we get the monies that were entrusted to us by the American taxpayer back to them into their communities to make it a better country? And so we are doing the work for that. We need you to help keep us accountable. I'm not saying that you're not working hard enough, but I am asking for your help and asking for your reach out so that we can continue to do a lot of this work, because we have put in place this technical assistant. We are constantly thinking about new ways to give you money, and the more that we hear from you, the better our processes become.
So maybe a quick point on technical assistance. One place where I find myself periodically envious of my interagency colleagues is agencies like HUD and EPA have presence on the ground around the country in a way the Treasury Department doesn't. And as we've gotten more engaged in types of programs that really require that you meet people where they are, we've had to be resourceful in figuring out the best way to do that. You know, I mentioned earlier that I've spent a bunch of time in the Southeast recently traveling. The only exception to that is I did a quick trip up to New York to meet with a handful of foundations. And the explicit purpose of those meetings was to encourage them to help support some of the TA infrastructure that is developing, because helping people figure out how to access these opportunities is just as important as the opportunities being there themselves. What I will say is that there are signs of progress that also leave me enthusiastic. I'll give you one example. Federally qualified health clinics, as many of you know, are spread all across the country. I think there are 1,800 of them or so. And they are a quintessential type of nonprofit that could really benefit from, for instance, a solar and battery installation project. You know, one, they're running tight margins, and so anything that can reduce their energy costs and save them money is a win. Two, they often have thousands of dollars of medicine in their refrigerators, and they can't deal with a power outage, and so having a backup power source like a battery can be a godsend. So all of that was fairly straightforward, but for a lot of these organizations, they're busy with their day jobs, and so figuring out how to, you know, do the project planning and project management and financial analysis that comes along with thinking about doing a solar and battery project has felt like too much for many of them. And philanthropy, in this case, the Kresge Foundation, did a really good job of standing up a new nonprofit whose entire mission is to systematically engage with federally qualified health clinics across the country, helping them think this through. You know, requesting some basic information, but putting together a package for consideration, meeting with their leadership, meeting with their board, and then ultimately, if they decide to pull the trigger, serving as the project manager that can help ensure the project gets implemented. I think as time passes, we are seeing more and more programs and organizations and entities like that that are helping from a TA perspective to connect some of these dots. But that's very much a place where I personally think we need to see more progress if we're going to ensure that everybody takes advantage of these opportunities.
Thank you. As we wind down, I want to make sure, give you the opportunity to address anything that you think will be helpful to this group that I didn't ask. Are there any, again, closing points or additional information you'd like to share? Please do.
I want to thank you for the opportunity to speak today. And I also want, since I'm representing the EPA, Environmental Protection Agency, I want to double up on the protection part. We've talked a lot about the money. We've talked about the environmental justice framework and the policy directive. That policy directive includes other actions in terms of rulemaking that we are doing that will have tremendous impacts, beneficial impacts in the low-income neighborhoods that we're talking about. So for example, we wrote a rule that says within 10 years, every single lead pipe in the country will be removed. Every single one. We wrote a rule approved earlier this year. The top 6 chemicals that impact people are all going to be regulated at much tighter levels, and that affects 90% more people of color, tribes, and poor neighborhoods. So those are the kinds of actions that supplement what we've been talking about today. This is really a turning point. It really is. And I can just, again, encourage everyone to work the system. The system has been designed to work for you. Work the system.
I want to echo that thanks, and I want to also thank you all for being not just a community financial institution, but a community powerhouse. Thank you so much for the investment of your time, your energy, your talents in making the Mississippi Delta what it needs to be, what it's supposed to be. I think a couple of things I want to make sure I mention. One is PAVE. This was a task force that was started under Secretary Fudge at almost the outset of the administration. It's the Property Appraisal Valuation Equity Task Force. It brings together 13 agencies to talk about all of that missing capital when we have, as a community, our homes underappraised. Despite having comparable amenities and resources, on average, black households have been undervalued at $48,000 each. This comes out to $162 billion in missing equity for black communities. There are a number of issues that make it systemically difficult to integrate this particular agency, or not agency, but this industry. It's actually 80% male, and it's 97% white. To put this in context, ranchers and sommeliers are more diverse than our home appraisers. So yeah, so the kinds of, you're not necessarily reflective of the communities that you're trying to look at. The values of these homes need to have their proper place. And so as we're talking about building more homes, we don't want to continue to build on a bad system, right? We need this system at its very core to work for everyone. So PAVE has been something that we've been working on. We've already launched an investigation. We have a congressional subcommittee working on it right now. And FHA wrote a mortgagee letter to clarify what non-discrimination requirements looks like. So what that effectively means is that if there is discrimination in appraisal, we're working on that remedy. That is going to be a fair housing issue. One of the other things I want to mention is that we're trying to make FHA loans easier for folks to obtain. We've done it a couple of ways. You know, if you have, what do we call it, the mother-in-law bungalow, or if you're buying a home with an accessory dwelling unit in the back, you're able to count the income that you would make off of that if you were going to rent it towards your loan. One other thing that we're doing is we're lowering the amount that a student loan would count against you in terms of your debt when taking out an FHA loan. And this should have happened decades ago. We are counting positive rental history. Yes. So there's a lot that HUD has been doing at the individual level, particularly sometimes when Congress can't decide on a speaker for weeks and weeks on end. We're trying to figure out ways that we can do what we can in order to make this system and this country work as it should. So I just want to thank you for doing your part to make your communities better, make your communities more reflective of what they need to be, because housing is an existential crisis. It's not just a discomfort. It's not just a mild inconvenience. We know that communities that don't have access to safe, decent, affordable, equitable, sustainable housing suffer. And I want to thank you all for taking your communities into your hands and making that more possible. So thanks so much for your time today.
So to close on this end, I'd say thank you again for letting us be a part of this event. And I'll echo a point I made at the top. There is something within or under this Inflation Reduction Act umbrella for just about everybody. I think about a lot of the points that we didn't get a chance to cover, some of the opportunities for small businesses, some of the other tax incentives that connect to housing, for housing developers and building owners. The list in some ways goes on, but you can sort of boil it down to some of the basics, which I think might be a good place to end. There's a real opportunity with the Inflation Reduction Act and the other pieces of the Investing in America agenda. And there's a real opportunity as we take this journey on the clean energy transition to make a few things different in this country. There are real opportunities to strengthen the economy overall, but strengthen some of the sub-economies that we care about. There are real opportunities to create jobs for folks who have struggled to find good-paying union jobs historically. There are real opportunities to make particular communities more independent and less reliant on things happening miles away or hundreds of miles away or thousands of miles away. And the key is making sure that we tap into all of those. So if I can leave you with anything, I'd say let's engage. Push us as hard as you can push us to get information out there so you are in a position to act. Let us know when the programs aren't working as we'd like them to work, when they're too complicated, when the processes are too burdensome. Maybe there's something we can do about it. But there's a real opportunity here, and I think we'll all feel better about ourselves if we really, really seize this moment and come out on the other end with a country that looks a little different than the one we're a part of now. So thank you again for the time.
Thank you. Thank you all. I think we've had several mic drop moments. You said it's in our bones. It is, and it's in the bones of the people in this room and in the people on whose shoulders we stand, who've been doing this work for so long. I often share with my colleagues, you cannot drive through the Deep South and not hear the ghosts of people who have given their all and telling us to finish the job. And it's now in our hands to finish the job. You've heard from this panel, you heard from the previous panel, you can feel their commitment. They said call them. They brought their colleagues with them. The opportunities here for us to grab. We do have to seize this moment, and I really hope that you found this valuable. I hope you found something you can take back to your communities. I want to ask my colleagues at Hope to stand once again. Consider these folks your partner, your shadow economic and community development ally. We can't do it all by ourselves, but I know collectively we can get this done. And we're committed to doing what we can to help connect the dots. Again, last but not least, I just want to say how much I appreciate the commitment from the Biden-Harris administration, making you all available. We have had dozens of federal officials involved in this, coming to the Black Belt, coming to the Mississippi Delta, coming here today to make sure that you have what you need to take advantage of these resources. Ladies and gentlemen, let's finish the job. Thank you so much. We are going to, I think, transition from this session to our Community Leadership Institute after lunch. We've got, again, a treasure trove of people who are ready to talk with you one-on-one about these resources. I want to give a shout out to my colleagues at NeighborWorks America who are here. We built this model on their, we built these this afternoon on their model. It's just important for us to take the time and exchange one-on-one, network among ourselves, and again, collectively, we can get a lot more done. So enjoy lunch, and this afternoon, stick around for the Community Leadership Institute. Thank you.